Hello everyone and welcome back to What a Barb, a Pollen podcast. I'm Obs, I've got everyone with me. We are feeling scared, but we are ready to go. How is everyone? Lecky, I've been forbidden from asking you if you've got any news, so I shan't ask you such a question.
Implying that I have news to share. Great, thank you.
How is the life of Lecky?
I have no idea. Oh, you know what? It's been really cold this week. Mm-hmm. So I've been wearing fuzzy socks, which I really love. And I usually don't sleep in socks, but...
We live in LA. There's usually no need for it.
Yeah. There's been a cold spell here. I've been freezing and I've been enjoying fuzzy socks. That's my news for the week. Next.
Vegetable. How is my veg?
Veg is great. Aww. There's loads of carrot-themed merch in the shops. I don't know what happened.
Easter is the time for veg.
Yeah.
She's thrilled.
This year... For some reason, I don't know which fashion house debuted it like a year ago or whatever, that it's trickled down. But this year, all the spring decorations, they're all like vegetable themed.
Carrots are in.
Absolutely thrilling. I've cleared out all the shops.
It's dangerous though, babe, because you get fleeced at Easter when there's like carrot themed stuff, but then autumn, you're also absolutely wrecked when all the orange stuff comes back in.
The pumpkins and the gourds and stuff.
Yeah. We're spending a lot.
What a time to be alive. Yeah. Elsewhere, we have a birthday bean almost on the horizon.
Oh,
yep.
Mm-hmm. Now, by the time you've listened to our other episode, you'd been like, how is it still her birthday?
Also, she looks radiant.
She does.
A radiant redhead.
I mean, my hair is back in a mess because I took a nap before this recording.
Looks good.
But she's back in the world of the redheads, are you not?
Yeah, I went a little bit opposite of the color wheel. Last time I was a little bit more like fire truck red, and now I'm more carrot orange red. But the reason I did that is because I did a color analysis party with my friends and found out that I'm a warm spring.
Ooh.
And colors like pumpkin and orange actually look really nice on me.
Warm spring is very you.
I'm going to do that so badly. But yeah, I was going to say the shade actually looks really, really good on you.
Yeah.
It's so nice.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, my hair is a mess, but thank you.
Well, congratulations to everyone on all of those achievements.
How are you, Offs?
Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm all right. It's my birthday soon. I'm going away, but I haven't actually decided where I'm going. But yeah, I'll be away soon. Thank the Lord.
That is fun.
Okay, guys, we've got a lot to cover in this episode, and I'm scared because it's taken me all day and it's a very long script. So
I'll just say this now in case we end up doing it. This might be a 3-parter.
Yeah.
If you remember our 208 rewatch, that was a 3-parter.
Yeah, and I cried. I cried multiple times over that episode, can I just point out? So if you don't want me to cry, don't shout at me about it being split into 3. But guys, we've done our best. What can we do?
Yeah.
So, Lecky, what have you got for us this week? And I'll preface this by saying we already recorded this once, and then more stuff happened.
It'll be better the second time around. So it has definitely been an exciting few weeks for Bridgerton fans. Last week, EW released 2 exclusive images from Season 4, featuring Penelope and Eloise walking together, books in hand, and another still of Eloise and Hyacinth sitting opposite Posey and Rosamond.
Was that just last week? I feel like I've lived a lot of lifetimes since then, actually, now I think about it.
It's been the longest, most brutal week in the world. But yeah, that was last week.
And how exciting. I mean, we have seen the Elle and Pen shot, kind of. Mm-hmm. So the behind the scenes, when they announced the Valentine's Day event, you saw Claudia Jessie and Nicola Coughlan in this exact scene, but they were kind of covered up.
Yeah, more covered, yeah.
In their jackets. So you could actually see more of the outfits this time. And you could see that they were both holding books. It looks like they've been shopping together, out having a gossip. Eloise's costume, definitely barky.
Definitely on the barky spectrum. And Pen's in a nice little floral number. Yeah, we both look beautiful. Someone had a really great suggestion for what they were talking about on Reddit. I actually kind of like this idea. I don't think they're going to do it, but they said maybe she's telling Eloise that she's writing a novel. And I thought that would be a really sweet little idea.
Oh, that would be really cute because they've got books.
Yeah.
That would be sweet. I wonder if it's just the two of them having a little bit of a gossip. It's not necessarily pure whistle down, but it's Pen's whistle down trait that she's always hidden from Eloise. And it's caused the rift between them. But now it's funny and light.
Healing.
And Jess Brownell talked about the bond in season 4, didn't she?
Mm-hmm. She said, they're more bonded than ever. Their trials and tribulations last season have added new depth to their friendship, and we're excited for viewers to see how the relationship looks now that they've each grown up a little.
And you had a look at the metadata, and this is from episode 4. 4, isn't it? So there was some speculation it was from episode 1 because Pen's hair is in a very similar updo, but we will get to Pen's updo in a little bit. But yeah, episode 4, midpoint of the season.
Well, the reason we still think that clip from the Season of Love event is from episode 1 is because there's the masquerade mask on the table.
With Colin walking up to Penelope in their bedroom.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely seems like 401.
It would seem weird for the mask to still be there in episode 4.
Well, unless he's like, I really liked that evening pen.
Yeah, that's also an option.
You know he's got many a kink as the man.
Moving on, the second still was from episode 6 and depicts, as we said, Eloise and Hyacinth sat opposite Posey and Rosamond, and they have very interesting expressions on their faces.
They do. So they're in Bridgerton house, having tea. Firstly, we've got the duo that we've been promised of Hyacinth and Eloise. Still so excited to see them two hanging out. To Belle's dismay, I've no doubt. I loved their expressions, first of all, how Eloise was slouching, completely disinterested, unimpressed. And then Hyacinth was sat there, and a little touch that I loved was that her shoes were off. It's like that little bit of rebellion. And she has such a fixed gaze on the two sisters.
Yeah.
And you noticed something about Rosamond and Posey's expressions.
Yeah, so I feel like this really tracks with Hyacinth's character because she's very, very observant. And I feel like this is a very significant moment that actually may be adapted straight from the books, but kind of with like a little twist on it. You know, we love an eyeline. It looks like Posey has her eyeline on the door as if she's watching someone in the doorway.
We've misinterpreted many an eyeline.
Of the drawing room. And she's kind of paused with like her biscuit halfway to her mouth. And I think from past interviews and past articles that we've had about Posey, she's supposed to be this very like chatty, silly, kind of goofy character. So I feel like she's maybe a little bit of a chatterbox, you know, chattering away. And then all of a sudden she goes silent because I think she spies Sophie in the doorway. And I think that it's possible that Rosamond had also clocked Sophie, but I think she didn't. I think that she's noticing, like Hyacinth, that Posey has gone silent and there's something weird about it.
Or like faltered.
Yeah, I think Hyacinth is reading more into the silence perhaps than Posey's sister is, but Rosamond is looking at Posey, but I don't think she has seen Sophie. But as I said, there is a very similar moment in the book where Posey notices Sophie outside the Bridgerton house, but I feel like maybe they've adapted it as if the Lee sisters have come calling on the Bridgertons to have tea, and they see Sophie inside the Bridgerton house.
And it is kind of around the same part of the book as well, because this still is from episode 6, so kind of late on in the game, and it almost tracks at the same part narratively in the book.
Yes, and it's kind of the inciting incident for some of the final drama in the book, setting up the climax and everything.
Which, again, will be coming up in these crumbs.
So I was kind of shocked that they actually shared it because it almost seems like a very significant moment if Posey has, in fact, seen Sophie at the Bridgerton house.
They're sharing loads of bloody stuff. I tell you what, we didn't get this during season 3 when they were in production.
I know. Episode 6, we would never, in our wildest fantasies, have imagined a still from episode 6 in our season, but it's fine.
What did Jess have to say about the Lee sisters then?
She said the Lee sisters are just making their debut into society this season, and their mother, Araminta Gunn, played by Katie Leung, has raised them to be perfect debutantes. But while Rosamond has become her mother's mini-me, a marriage-marked pro chess player, Posey is dreamy and often unserious, much to her mother's disapproval. Araminta and Rosamond are so focused on their own goals that frankly, the Bridgertons don't register for them much at first, beyond the fact that Benedict proves to be quite the catch this season.
Well, as I say, we were all surprised to get the stills been dropped out of the blue, but a lovely surprise nonetheless. I can only think of 2 corresponding moments like this, because EW do get exclusives, don't they, often?
Yeah.
So there was the Colin photo that they released to celebrate Inside Bridgerton, which was the behind the scenes book coming out. And that was a little bit of a tease of Colin as a lead. And it had the photo of him from 106 that everyone, Beans, thought was a brand new photo.
To their credit, the coloring of the photo was a little different. So it almost looked like a new picture.
Kind of looked like a new scene. And then I think Luke Newton had to be like, guys, this is a very old photo. But we were excited. And then the other one is the Penelope still that was released in November 2023. And that was the two of them caught in complete conflict at Jen's in 301. So how nice, how full circle to go from that being the first Penelope's look of season 3 to this being the first Penelope's look of season 4.
Oh, yeah. Moving on, all eyes are now turning to, and I have to sigh from exhaustion as I say this, to Doom 2025, which has been confirmed for Sunday, the 1st of June.
We've talked about it done before on the podcast, but if you're new around these parts, it's sort of like a showcase that Netflix do for its flagship shows. So sometimes it's been virtual in the past, sometimes it's like a real expo. It was in Brazil one year, and it's kind of where all their shows have a chance to preview what's coming up. Sometimes there's trailers, clips, panels, interviews, all sorts of little announcements and things going on. So will Bridgerton be a part of this Tudum?
Yeah, I feel like Bridgerton will be featured in some way, regardless of whether they share new material, but I think they will probably share something. And this year, I think it's in Los Angeles.
Your neck of the woods, babe. And this is probably the last Tudum. I mean, you never know, do you? Jesus Christ. This is probably the last Tudum before the season actually drops, weirdly enough, because there's a lot of questions about whether it will be 2025, 2026, but I think people aren't expecting it to be much later than spring 2026.
Right, yeah. So I think we'll get something. So there has been no confirmation that Bridgerton will be featured, but it wouldn't be surprising. There may even be a clip. Who knows? It's back in the clown car for all of us. I've honestly lost track at this point of how many Tudums we have all lived through. Much clowning has been had.
And I think in the UK it begins at like midnight or something. So,
oh, great. How fun.
It's going to be a long night.
In more season 4 news, there have been unverified reports that there may be a few delays in wrapping up filming on the season. It was originally expected that the show would wrap this month, but Production Weekly seems to suggest production may continue through to the early summer. Regardless, there really isn't far to go with filming now, which I'm sure is exciting to all fans.
That is unconfirmed, and we do know that they are very much in the last block, deep in, almost at the end. Speaking of,
we do know that production have been filming at Ranger's house this week, which listeners will recognize as the location used for the exterior Bridgerton house shots. The wisteria is up, and interestingly, for Eloise fans, it seems the swings in the back garden have also been set up for filming, where they are very likely to be used for the now traditional Elle and Ben scene at the end of the season.
Yes, and I'm so sorry, I cannot remember the Redditor's name, but I really love this theory I saw on Reddit that obviously we're so used to having at the end of every season that touch point of Elle and Ben on the swings together, sort of the two outcasts finding solace in one another, and the idea that it might just be Elle left alone on the swings. Ben's having his happy ever after, and we harken back to that traditional scene, but it's Elle alone.
Catalyst moment.
And it's that sort of crisis that she has in the books, and that we saw last season of I'm being left behind in my own life.
Yeah, I think that is how they're going to do it. It would be a great little catalyst moment and tease for her season. Yeah, I 100% agree with that theory. I think that may be exactly what we see.
Because obviously they reverse the order of Colin and Pen. So Colin and Pen have already been married, but she's still got that link with Benedict that sort of keeps her from going off the deep end.
And if he doesn't show up for her, she's alone, except for Hyacinth, who at that point she may actually want to get away from. So,
oh, great.
In more Bridgerton house news, and spoiler alert for anyone avoiding season 4 Crumbs, those of you who have missed Pen's black ribbon of mourning from back in season 1 are in for a treat, as some mournful black ribbon has appeared on the gates of Ranger's house this week. Perhaps suggesting that someone has passed away?
John.
Take your bets.
John.
On who it could be.
John.
We think it's probably John.
It's John. We don't know that it's John. I have two thoughts about this black ribbon. First thought is, what if it's just ribbon?
Yeah.
What if it's just the production? Because they were putting the flowers on the gates. What if it's just like flower netting or something that they were using to like protect the flowers? And so there's no mournful ribbon and it's us being clowns.
The only other option I could think of is that it was like a covering that they were going to add, I don't know, autumn leaves to or something like that in like post-production, but it has to be a black ribbon of mourning. They already had the material.
And I think fans have been doing some research which said in, I think it might be in Victorian England, so a little bit later, that is what you did when someone died. You would drape black fabric over the front.
Yeah. And, you know, they're not sticklers for historical accuracy. So if they had to jump ahead and like, you know, steal that little nugget from history.
Add to the drama. And the Bridgertons do love a bit of mourning, don't they?
Wearing bees everywhere. Yeah.
And the thing is, there's different contenders. Marina might die this season, but why would the Bridgertons put that display up? The king could, I suppose. But I mean, realistically, after the coffin debacle of a few weeks ago.
I thought you were going to say after the corpse. Very apt.
Well, after the corpse as well. It's not looking good. He's looking peaky, bless him.
Yeah, this tied in with what we covered last time about the flowers that Victor Alley had posted on social media. It's not looking great for John.
It's a lot.
So we'll see how it goes. And as if that wasn't interesting and mournful enough, and also, Beans, cover your ears if you're listening, a prison carriage was seen outside the Bridgerton house location. Benefit fans, you will all know this is a huge plot moment from the end of An Offer from a Gentleman. So it's been very surreal to see this playing out.
How weird, the actual story. Unless it's the Queen finally coming for Pen's head.
Yes. They had a tentative relationship at the beginning of the season, and it takes a very dark turn in episode 6.
Lots to look forward to. But looking backwards...
Fans also recently celebrated the 3rd anniversary of season 2, so happy anniversary to Cantony.
Lucky, what's your favourite season 2 non-Polin moment?
The sister.
Sister.
202 and 207 are my favorite to rewatch.
Mine is Colin and Elle dancing together at the Hamley Ball.
Oh, yep, that's a better option than mine. But I do like the sister. Yeah, when they're getting shaved at the beginning of season 2. And this week, Pollen fans are also celebrating Pollen Week 2025, a week centered around 2 very important moments in the book Pollen calendar. Pollen's first meeting on April 6th. Is it today?
Today. Possibly, depending.
Oh, for you it's today. Not quite there for me yet.
If we release it today, this episode was slightly delayed, but think about it as very intentional, released specifically for today. Absolutely.
Or if you're a fan of the show, technically Colin and Marina's first meeting as well, tragically enough.
Less ideal, ultimately.
And Penelope's birthday on April 8th.
Oh, we'll whack you a collage up, Penelope. Yeah, so happy first meeting, Colin and Pen. Happy first meeting, Colin and Marina, I guess. We did a reread series last year, so this time last year we released our first installment of that. So if you want to go listen to us read the book and get everything wrong about predicting season 3.
And have Beans do hilarious voices for Penelope and Colin at one point.
Enjoy. Very talented woman. So, Lecky, we've been celebrating this all week on our Instagram, and thank you so much to the organisers of Pollen Week. It's been so much fun, but I'm going to very quickly go over each day. I want quick fire answers, okay? Day 1, favourite hand scene.
Garden apology handhold followed by the double handhold.
That's a lie. Tell the truth.
The tassels? That's not, I wouldn't say that's my favourite. You keep saying that's my favourite. I think it's a funny moment.
Well, I think you spent a lot of time sending it to me in the past, actually, so...
The tassels are not... Okay, in the Harmony Ball, as they're going into the Harmony Ball, Colin fingers tassels. I think I actually made a joke of that in our rewatch way back when. And because Colin has not yet figured out his feelings for a certain redhead, he instead fingers some tassels as he makes his entrance into the ballroom.
Right, so Lecky's favourite hand scene is Colin fondling tassels.
No, justice for Lecky, because you keep saying that, but if I had to choose one from, like, the past seasons, it's probably the way he caresses her hand after the Vauxhall dance, because it's like this little blink and miss it moment that shows so much promise for the future.
That's a good one. And the double handhold was insane, let's be real. And then there's a lot of gesturing going on, listeners, that you can't see. Anyway, there's a highlight reel on Instagram of
options. Go and pick one for ops.
Some very informative gifs. Day 2, favourite kiss.
The dream kiss. I feel it's really underappreciated.
It is. Guys, you're literally sleeping on the dream kiss.
This one, it's really, really hard. There's so many good ones. And I will say that their first kiss is iconic and beautiful in a way that I could not have even imagined. But I'm going to say the dream kiss because it's underappreciated and the hand on the wall moment makes it. We'd like a hand gesture. What can we say?
We're hand girls. Day 3, favourite dance. I have to throw it back to Vauxhall.
Oh.
It's sweet, it's joyful.
Vauxhall's really good. For me, it's the church dance, the bands, or the Take Me to Church version of the wedding dance.
Day 4, favourite quote, can be from the book, can be from the show.
Garden apology. The love confession that isn't a love confession. The you make me see the world in ways I could not have imagined. You are clever and warm and loaded paused. And I'm proud to call you my very good and
friend.
Strictly platonic friend.
Mine is feelings like dreaming of you when I'm asleep, and in fact preferring sleep because that's where I might find you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then Home Was Anywhere with Penelope from the books. Day 5, Polin as parents. Are you an Elliot or are you a Thomas? Or are you an either?
I don't care.
You're happy to interpretation.
Yeah. I'm not super attached to the book name. I'm not super attached to the Elliot name that Luke and Nicola have joked about. I'm fine with whatever.
I just think they can't go George. That's the only thing I'm insistent on.
Yeah, I guess I'm really interested to see what it is, but they could take it in any direction they want, and as long as it's not ridiculous, I'll be happy.
I just like the idea of them never saying. Just never getting around to it.
The anonymous little Lord Featherington.
Day 6, Pollen songs. What's on your Pollen playlist like?
Perfect by Ed Sheeran, the
Always.
epitome of Pollen songs for me. Yeah.
It was a dark, dark day in the podcast when the season 3 soundtrack got released. I tell you that for nothing.
Oh, I know. Because I feel like the song just really fits with their entire love story.
The lyrics are literally there. And it has the perfect sound of the closing dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Dreams Dying, that's a good thing for Lecky to learn. Mine is I Carrion, a Carrion by Hosier. And Day 7, last of all, favourite Pollen scene of all time. That's really hard. Yours is easy.
It's hanging on my wall. Garden Apology.
Mine is, I don't know. I don't think I could pick a favourite. I love the purpose scene. I love the remarkable shade of blue.
It's hard. It's very ever after. She says, I no sooner could choose a star from the heavens. That's Pollen scenes for you. It's hard to pick a favourite.
For me, it's like the tiny little giggly moments, like Gallop Along and stuff like that.
Yeah, Gallop Along. Mm-hmm.
And talking of your favourite Pollen scene.
Yes, funnily enough, my favourite Pollen scene, the Garden Apology from 301, is being used in a new Netflix campaign for their multilingual support feature that has recently been rolled out. So congratulations to the apology scene, I suppose.
Yeah, if you want to go watch Colin accidentally confess his love 50 different ways, knock your sen out.
Continuing on the Pollen theme, shocking really for a Pollen podcast, Nicola was recently interviewed by Harper's Bazaar as part of the new Olaplex Designed to Defy campaign she is starring in. When asked how Penelope's beauty look on the show will be changing as the character embraces motherhood in a new family color palette, Nicola said, the designs this year are softer. She's definitely leaning into motherhood, so there are a lot more updos and things like that. It's a lot simpler this time, but she's a busy lady. Nicola also looked back on her season 3 styling, saying, the weeks I had for Bridgerton season 3 were so beautiful and romantic, and I really adored those sort of Veronica Lake waves that I had. Those styles are sometimes easier to keep in a wig because it's set, whereas real hair moves differently. That was really beautiful, and they were. Her hair in season 3 was great.
I adored her season 3 hair.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of leads,
Jaren Ha was featured on the cover of Numero Netherlands and was also interviewed by the publication. During the interview, she was asked how it felt to be the first East Asian lead on the show, to which she answered, I'm glad I can represent and shine more light for the East Asian community this season, although with that comes a lot of pressure. You always want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward and doing good work because I know how important this story is to so many people and what this means. It's been a true gift, but I honestly could not have been in the position I am in today if it was not for all the BIPOC actors and actresses that came before me that fought hard to make changes in this industry. Jaren also talked about being a fan of the show before being cast as Sophie, describing the storytelling as magnificent and genius. She also reflected on her experience joining the show, saying, professionally, I've never done a romantic drama before, and frankly never believed that I could be a female romantic lead for such a show, so it's been mentally challenging, but in the most positive way. Booking this role proved that I too can play and deserve these roles, and that I should continue to keep dreaming big of the work that I want to do in the future. We will link the full interview in our show notes.
that's so sweet because it feels like we only just heard from Jaren when she was starting out the job. So to now hear when she's almost on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Kind of reflecting on the journey.
And how transformative it's been for her. Yeah.
In awards news, big congratulations are in order to Nicola Coughlan and Erica Oakfist, who have both been nominated at the BAFTAs. Nicola is nominated for female performance in a comedy for her role in Big Mood, and Erica and her team are nominated for makeup and hair design for their incredible work on season 3. Erica and her team were also named the International Film and TV Hairdresser of the Year at the International Hairdressing Awards, which is so well deserved. I don't know if you've noticed, but the picture they've used for that is from season 2 fan art.
Liz Tapia,
who just made an iconic version of the What a Barb scene. So go check it out.
So good. And Flame Dork has been active this week.
Yes. Not to forget, voting is still open for the P&O Cruises Memorable Moment Award at the BAFTAs, for which our beloved carriage scene has been nominated. Please go and vote if you haven't already. Best of luck to Nicola, Erica, and the carriage. In cast and creatives news, Sam Phillips will be appearing at Comic-Con Romania on the 26th of April. He will also be reprising his role in A Man for All Seasons when the play visits London's West End later this year. The show will run at the Harold Pinter Theatre for a limited season from the 6th of August to the 6th of September. Golda Rochevelle will be joining the Bush Theatre's 2025-2026 season in their production of Superwoman Schema. It has been announced that Phoebe Dynevor has also been cast alongside Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the upcoming terrifying new genre film Pendulum. The film will follow a young couple on an unconventional New Age retreat and has recently entered production. And Safney fans, you can catch Regé-Jean Page in the upcoming Count of Monte Cristo movie, which he will also be producing. And I think that is pretty much it.
God, I should hope so, babe. Deep breath. We are now jumping back into the second part of our 304 rewatch. I think we might have mentioned it in the intro. We did absolutely fail, and this will be 3 parts. And I swear to God, we are not trying to draw this out. It's actually the last thing we wanted.
We did not want a carriage-themed episode, but that's what we ended up with, so
that's what you're going to get at some point. I'm sorry that we're not doing the carriage today. We will get to it. It has been recorded. Our thoughts have been locked. But for today, we're off to the Eros and Psyche ball. So enjoy. And apologies, there's slightly dodgy audio once or twice.
Yeah.
Have fun. Let's pick up exactly where we left off in our last episode, where Colin is left chewing on some Penelope thoughts following his conversation with Violet on the staircase, while the rest of the ton is heading to the palace for the Queen's ball. And who won't we find arriving over there but the Featherington carriage pulling across the bridge and into the palace courtyard. Where are we, Beans?
So we are at Hampton Court Palace, which is somewhere we visited before. It's canonically been used as the palace, especially the courtyard, where we saw the Bridgertons pull up for the debutantes presentation in season 1. When the part 1 trailer and a few stills were released, we spent a lot of time matching up the bricks and the exterior of the carriage arriving, and the scene where Colin runs out of the ball. So yeah, any exterior shots of the ball were filmed at Hampton Court Palace. I should also mention that these scenes were part of pickups done near the tail end of the shoot while Nicola was simultaneously shooting Big Mood, which is why there are some inconsistencies with her styling, like her acrylic nails, on occasion.
So for those who didn't get a chance to listen to our Filming Crumbs episode covering Block 4, What an Exterior Church Wall, a very excellent name indeed, the production shot pickups at several locations later in the shoot, namely in Bath and here at Hampton Court Palace. We think this was done for several reasons. To start off, Queen Charlotte was filming at some of the same locations the summer the shoot was initially set to begin, and due to a delay in production, those locations may not have been available when they started shooting Block 1. Another reason why pickups are done is because while Bridgerton traditionally favors a block structure where they film 2 episodes at the same time, sometimes it's easier to shoot all the scenes that occur in one location at one time, or if there are scheduling issues, etc. For example, when they visit Ranger's house to film Bridgerton house shots, they will be capturing shots for a number of episodes that may sometimes cross over filming blocks. The production is less likely to run into these problems now that they've recreated so many of the main sets we've seen at Shepperton Studios, which has probably helped out a lot in season 4.
Well, we will definitely be returning to this courtyard a little bit later on, but for now, it's time for us to join the rest of the ton and head inside because a performance is about to begin. As we wait for curtain up, we have a little trip down memory lane to take, don't we, Lecky?
Yes, we do. We step into the ballroom of the Queen's Ball, which actually was filmed on a specially built set, not on location. If you've been in the fandom a while, you'll know that there is a lot of fandom lore associated with this ball, as it was part of the infamous leaked promo footage that was accidentally released way back in January 2023, well over a year before it was supposed to air.
Whoops.
And with it came our first look at Nicola Coughlan and Luke Newton fully in season 3 costume as Penelope and Colin. If you weren't around at the time, then I can't stress to you enough how much Penelope's glow-up was kept under wraps. It was a long time, guys. We've already seen officially released stills from Season 4 showing Sophie in both her masquerade and maid outfits, but Season 3 worked on a completely different timeline. We had nothing.
Dust.
Until one day, we suddenly had everything. Well, kind of. We had something, but it felt like everything back then.
We talked about it a lot in that episode that you're talking about, Lecky. What an external church wall.
Exterior church wall.
Sorry, exterior church wall. How can I get my titles wrong?
To be fair, all we have is ext. It could be anything.
Ext. Yeah, it's true.
Well, exterior, ext stands for exterior in scripts, and INT is interior, so interior, exterior.
Aren't you glad you listened to our podcast?
That's great knowledge, but I like to think it could be anything.
Yeah, it could be external. It could be extraneous, like an unnecessary church wall.
Could be exterminate. Exterminate.
Yeah, it could be a killer church wall.
Do you know that people are here as to talk about the fingering scene and we're here talking about the external church wall?
The extraneous church wall, the exterminate church wall. Love it.
Extraordinary church wall.
The extraordinary church wall.
Sorry, what were you saying?
To this day, this remains one of my favourite days in the fandom. We covered the This Morning debacle, as we say, in a previous episode, which we'll link in our show notes. But Veg, you were there on that historic day. Talk us through it.
Distinguished listeners, you sit before an iconic look, possibly the most iconic look from Pen of the whole damn fandom. And for you fortunate new joiners who just picked up the show when the trailer came out or something, love that for you. Allow me to explain. Cast your minds back to January the 9th, 2023. Where were you?
I remember vividly.
I was at work at my old job, slaving away. I think I was in the office. The others were in some state of work or sleep. Suddenly, the fandom was abuzz. After months of the tiniest, tiny crumbs and no sign of Pen besides the blurriest blurs that we thought were children, we finally had our first proper look in the form of a leaked interview, which was part of a coming up this year for a morning show in the UK.
The fuck of it wasn't even coming up this year, was it?
No.
Yeah.
2023 just passed it by.
Yeah, I think without the strikes it may have been, but that's a whole other combo. So these outfits were literally, as Lecky implied, the first look we got of our wonderful Pollen, and how beautiful they were. And I just want to mention this law because we discussed these looks a lot, like a lot.
That's all we had.
And we went through every eventuality of what they could be. The first ball, the first kiss, their engagement ball. Colin's waistcoat seemed to match Pen's dress just enough to send her spiralling. But at one point, and I think our most recent conclusion was we thought they were just random costumes from other scenes that they'd like quickly put on.
Yeah.
I forgot that.
Skills of deduction, not entirely there, guys.
Yeah. I don't think we ever speculated it would be the carriage scene.
No, we didn't.
So just the fact that it turned out to be that is surreal, and I would just like to take a moment.
I would just say, in our defense, the thing about it being like completely separate outfits, we didn't know that Luke Newton was re-wearing costumes at that point. Yeah. He hadn't given any interviews where he talked about how he picked out his own wardrobe. So I think we saw the still of him at Austerley and realized that was the same waistcoat. And we're like, he must have just popped on an old costume.
Yeah.
Just from the vault.
And we called this look Enchanted Pen and also Enchanted Colin, but he shows up later. So we'll cover that at the time. And that was due to the similarity to Amy Adams' character in the 2007 film Enchanted. And she's wearing gold shoes, which I will describe when we get to see them.
We get up close and personal with those, don't we?
Yeah, but there are no sign of the pyjama bottoms that she had on in the This Morning interview. And I guess that would have been additional barrier for Colin to have to wiggle his hands into. So fair enough. Pen's dress is in the aqua colour we've grown to adore over the course of part one with puffed organza sleeves. And as with many of her looks, there's some layering going on, some kind of what colour is it situation. And the full extent of the layers we will discover later. There is a shimmer. There's little kind of circle applique type things all over. And the costume team said that they didn't want to go for anything too obvious in terms of her look. So they just included a hint of sparkle. The petticoat is sheer, they said, and they wanted to use something soft and slippy to help with the action when Colin is lifting up her skirt. But spoilers, we will get to that.
Slippy. Could have had a different word there, guys.
Pen is also wearing her signature fingerless gloves, but while the fabric on her gloves may be missing a few fingers, luckily Colin Bridgerton is on hand with a few fingers to spare.
Indeed.
So Pen's hair is mostly down, but is partially pulled back into small, beautiful curls, which almost look like tiny Regency space buns.
Sweet.
Nicola's primary hairstylist, Farida Guedhar, was looking for something pretty and classic for this scene, as it's such an important moment of the story, and she didn't want Pen to be hidden behind an elaborate hairstyle. She also gave her some hair accessories, which were a kind of style evolution of those in the Hawkins Ball. And in terms of makeup, Jessie Deal also sought out something timeless and classic this time, so it would be versatile in all scenarios Penelope gets into.
And all the men that get into her.
Yeah, and we've also loved this look since it appeared in front of us on January the 9th, 2023, and it was so surreal to see it in such an iconic context.
Enchanted Pen, it's the way they were framed as well, like so perfectly, beautifully in shot together. Gorgeous. They're in contention of my favourite Pen and Colin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And during the accidentally released, very promptly deleted promo footage, you could actually see clips from inside this set. And we originally called it the Red Ball. We quickly pieced together that it was a ball being thrown by the Queen because her footmen were hanging around everywhere. But we could also see what appeared to be a distinct Grecian theming to the ball, which way back in the day of season 3 speculation was incredibly exciting, especially as certain people, who shall not be named, but may also all be on this podcast, had pinned a lot of hopes on Greek mythology being used in the season. I mean, were we wrong?
I mean, no, you weren't wrong. So
Not in the way we thought, though.
your hopes kind of panned out. But yes, in terms of the inspiration for the ball, we see a dance floor framed by Grecian-style columns. But unlike the columns we saw at the Four Seasons ball at the beginning of season 3, these columns look like a crumbling ruin. I absolutely love this detail because it almost seems like a reflection of Polin's relationship at this point in the story, which is quite literally threatening to crumble into dust and become a ruin, a relic of the past, as Penelope's on the verge of accepting Debling's proposal.
Yeah, so we were kind of roundabout in a way. I mean, it's a Grecian ball with the myths, and you could see where we're coming from. There'd been a lot of Grecian influences in the past seasons, especially the hero and Leander myth being used in season 1 by Colin himself. What we thought were Odyssey parallels with Colin's travels and Penelope being called, well, Penelope.
There are Odyssey parallels.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, they didn't pursue them.
They're just not overt with it in season 3, that's all.
Colin's interest in Greece. I could do a whole episode on this topic of Grecian influence, but I think Lecky might actually leave my life forever if I forced you to do that. But in our defence, the cladding was at least a bit justified, as we say, because Greek mythology and inspiration is found throughout season 3. For example, at the Four Seasons ball in episode 1, the tile on the dance floor has a Grecian border. Believe me, we were studying it closely. There is also the repeated imagery of Eros and Psyche, including through the statue that appears a few times throughout the season, but we will get to Eros and Psyche in just a moment.
Interestingly, while this is the Queen's Ball, the dance floor is also flanked by images of Zeus, the king of the gods.
And here at the Queen's Ball, you'll also notice some Grecian influence in the costumes we see. Lady Danbury is sporting a Grecian laurel wreath diadem, which is a word that when I was reading the Harry Potter books, I completely pronounced differently in my head.
Oh, how did you pronounce it?
Dunno.
Diadem.
Yeah, just not the way you said it just now.
Probably diadem. By the way, trans lives matter.
My friend read the entire Twilight books and thought Carlisle was pronounced as Carlisle the whole way through.
That's fun. Like thistle.
Amazing.
Yeah, Carlisle.
That's cute.
So Cressida also has a dramatic sculptural swirling sleeve situation going on, which is reminiscent of the volutes on Ionic capitals. Definition in the show notes.
It's the top of a column.
You know the column thing like
Yeah.
It does this?
Like the swirls on the column.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love.
I'm glad I spent £50,000 on a classics degree. Jesus Christ.
One lady has a toga-esque sash, another has rope detailing, perhaps inspired by the way rope or cording was used to tie Greek garments. In fact, many ladies of the ton seem to have really taken to the Greek theme for the night. You could argue that Pen didn't really get the Grecian theme memo, but we don't care because our Enchanted Pen, Psyche Pen, Carriage Pen looks amazing.
I cannot disagree. And she stands out, you know, she's not on theme, but...
Yeah, maybe it was a deliberate choice to make her stand out
Yeah.
among all the other guests who kind of have those Grecian costumes.
Like Amy Adams' character in Enchanted.
See, it's all there.
And also the Featheringtons' costumes are outlandish in the way they always are, because they always kind of stand out a little bit. So yeah.
So we have our beautiful Enchanted Penelope in attendance, and she's standing with her family and looking anxiously around as the ballet begins.
And as the dance begins, Pen is having trouble keeping her thoughts away from Colin. The script says that we find Penelope scanning for Colin, but there's no sign of him. Eventually, she refocuses on the dance.
As we know, the ballet tells the story of Eros and Psyche, a myth which is used throughout season 3 as a parallel for the love story between Penelope and Colin. The mosaic on the dance floor is a replica of the painting The Abduction of Psyche by William Adolph Bouguereau, perfectly setting the scene for the dance to unfold.
But enough about paintings. You all know we love a swan, because the real star of the Queen's Ball, of course, is Queen Charlotte's swan wig. The Queen knew she was planning a ballet for the evenings, was taking up the theme in her wig. Veg, tell me more.
Well, this swan wig worn by Queen Charlotte was the talk of the ton and the media, and we are so glad that Erica Ockfist, who designed it, got her flowers for this because it was spectacular. And Erica mentioned that the wig had been in her head since season 2 but couldn't find a place for it. And when it turned out the Queen would be putting on a ballet performance for the evening, Erica realised she could incorporate the Swan Lake design into the Queen's ballet look. As you will all know as well, Pollen fans have long associated swans with Pollen, so the inclusion of the swan design here works even better. It's perfect. There were motors used with battery packs hidden under Golda's armpit to make the swans move, but I have a headcanon that there was a short-statured servant hidden under the dress, frantically winding a hand crank. And a makeup artist also painted the backdrop with oil paint. This is such a wonderful and opulent design, and I think it perfectly represents how Bridgerton is, to be honest. So much fun. Not necessarily historically accurate in the slightest, but who gives a shit when it looks this good?
Indeed, yeah. Actually, Veg, your headcanon is not that far off. Erica talked a little more about her decision to add the interactive clockwork element, explaining that it helped infuse a little more of the period-accurate component. Erica said, in these times, of course, everybody had a clock and they would wind the clock with a key, so the fact that she's got that in her hair is absolutely historically correct and appropriate. So maybe there really is a servant hidden under there.
Just twisting the key.
Yeah. I also love Queen Charlotte's dress during this ball. It was the one she wore during all of the promo, and it's covered in quills and feathers, so very on theme for both Swan Lake and her connection to Lady Whistledown.
Indeed. And speaking of Queen Charlotte, she then whispers to Brimsley, perhaps this little love play will inspire my lovers tonight. And while the dance does inspire lovers, we know it's not the ones that Queen Charlotte has her eyes on.
So let's turn to the little love play before us, which is not Swan Lake, but is instead inspired by the myth of Eros and Psyche. The role of Eros is performed by Max Westwell, and Psyche is performed by Kira Oslin. Max is actually a recurring dancer in season 3, along with the other dancers, so they have a group of dancers who perform all of the ball scenes together. And Kira is a former principal artist with the UK ballet company Ballet Black and is now the director of Yorkshire Ballet Seminars. And both performers are costumed perfectly in this scene, and I think all viewers were particularly in awe of Eros's golden wings. Yeah. And they were actually drawn, painted and applied by Olivia Gerard, who, fun fact, worked on the Wicked movie. Oh. She was the person who created the prosthetic ears for Cynthia Erivo. Oh, how cool is that?
Very cool.
Dabbling in a little bit of Eros work too. And she worked with the makeup artist Lance Breakwell to hand paint the golden wings onto Max. And of course, the dance was choreographed by the incredible Jack Murphy, who was especially delighted at the opportunity to create the Eros and Psyche dance for the show, which is something we've never really seen in Bridgerton before. We've had a lot of dances, but this is a performance that we're watching. And Jack told Shondaland, I must say, when I read Jess Brownell's first 4 episodes and she placed a Greek myth in the 4th episode, I nearly had all my Christmases at once. I think it's fantastically clever because the genre of costume drama asks for actors to play melodrama. Melodrama means grand emotions, and we are playing with the grandest emotion every single time, which is love. He said, although it's danced by ballet dancers, it's very beautiful storytelling that is connected to the parallel story of Colin and Penelope. It is not dance for dance sake. It is there because of the brilliance of the writers. It's consciously and subconsciously provoking thoughts in the characters' heads about what they want. They are seeing self, they are seeing fantasy, and they are seeing reality.
I really like the they are seeing self.
Yeah, it's being used as a mirror straight back at them. So Eros and Psyche here are being used as parallel for the love story of Colin and Penelope. Okay, the Eros and Psyche myth, the of SparkNotes edition. The first reference to the Eros and Psyche myth comes from Apuleius' Metamorphoses in the late 2nd century AD, and the story tells the tale of Psyche, a mortal woman who was so renowned for her beauty that word spread across the land and it ended up getting back to Aphrodite, or Venus as she's often known, the goddess of beauty and love. Venus was not too thrilled to hear about this supposedly beautiful woman, and so enlisted her troublemaking son, Cupid, or Eros, as he's also known, to go down with his torches and his bow and arrow and cause Psyche to fall in love with a hideous beast and marry him. Word got out that this was Psyche's fate, and so she was taken to the top of a mountain where she was to be abandoned to her fate. However, a benevolent gust of wind carried her safely down to a bed of flowers where she found a magnificent home. In this magnificent home, there was an invisible husband who would visit her every single night to sleep with her, to take care of her. The two fell in love, but Psyche was forbidden for finding out her husband's true identity until one night she was persuaded by her sisters to betray the trust of her husband and to gaze upon his true identity as he was sleeping. To do this, she used an oil lamp. You guessed it, folks. Her secret husband was actually Eros, who, despite having been tasked with finding Psyche a specific husband, had instead fallen in love with her himself. Is this sounding familiar to anyone? Let's carry on. Psyche accidentally spilt some of the hot oil onto Eros, causing him to wake up in pain. He was so enraged to find out that Psyche had broken his trust and discovered his true identity that he kicked her out of the house that they shared and fled to the heavens. Psyche was incredibly repentant and signed herself up for a number of trials to try and win Eros back. It didn't go well. She ended up getting herself into a coma, at which point Eros, realising that his love superseded his anger, returned to save her, and he took her to the heavens where he pleaded with Jupiter, Zeus to save her and make her immortal through the gift of ambrosia. And Psyche and Eros lived happily ever after. So there are a few obvious parallels between Eros and Psyche and Bridgerton, obviously including the overt references that they have in this particular episode. But a couple more parallels. There are 3 sisters in the original myth, just like there are 3 Featherington sisters. Psyche at one point is described as staying at home, a virgin, single, weeping in lonely solitude. I think we can all agree that's Pen in 301 and 302. She was also condemned to an ill-suited marriage. She was saved by the wind. Think about the parallels between the Polin meet cute, and I suppose there's a near-death experience by Bloom, but the wind is still involved, so that's a cool parallel. Eros is also associated with torches, which are prevalent throughout season 3. Psyche is often associated with butterflies in art, which is, as we know, the symbol of the Featherington household, and it's used throughout season 3. Eros is supposed to help Psyche fall in love with a beast, technically, not calling Debling a beast, but he falls in love with Psyche himself and becomes her husband. How very Colin Bridgerton of him. And he also only visits Psyche in the night to make love to her, which is very dream sequence, if you ask me. Preferring sleep because that is where he might find her? Of course, there is the parallel between Eros being injured by the oil lamp and Colin cutting his hand on a candle holder, all tied up to Psyche discovering Eros's true identity and Penelope discovering Colin's secret writings. Colin is just as pissed off as Eros is with the discovery, although thankfully he doesn't banish Pen from the house or flee to the heavens. But Eros is completely consumed by his anger, and it creates a physical distance between him and Psyche, but one that he eventually cannot help but overcome because of how much he loves her. And this is kind of similar to Colin's part 2 anger and his physical distance, where he can't sleep with her or exist in the same marital space as her. But ultimately, he overcomes the sense of betrayal and jealousy and finds his way back to an eternal love. And then also, I suppose, Ambrosia is technically a part of season 3, but we'll get to that another day. What does the myth represent, and what does it have to do with Bridgerton? Well, it's meant many things throughout history, but often it's been interpreted as being about the soul's journey to immortality through love. Psyche is the Greek word for soul, and Psyche as a character has often represented the embodiment of the soul. It's a story of sexual passion, betrayal, jealousy, concealed identity. It's about the ability of the soul to overcome almost impossible trials in the pursuit of divine love. It's also deeply about transformation and individual growth and the journey of the soul. What I will say is, although there are a number of parallels between the original myth and season 3, the show isn't directly translating the myth beat for beat. It's more of a reimagining of a story to tell Penelope and Colin's own story of personal growth, love in the face of many trials, and how being true to one's soul can lead you to an immortal love. But back to the ballet, Jack Murphy talked about how important storytelling was in creating the choreography for the dance. He told the official Bridgerton podcast that the music informed a great deal of how it would play out. We had this wonderful piece that is incredibly sophisticated and very difficult, and he mentioned that when they were in the studios choreographing the scene, they didn't actually use technical dance language in rehearsals. They used language that was driven by narrative, so instead of using, now you're going to do this turn, whatever, they would use phrases like, now Psyche is in limbo, she's deflated, she's in the state of near death, I want to see life less, I want to see gravity in the body. And so that was the direction that shaped the creation of the dance. And Jack said that we didn't have to get embroiled with, is this modern ballet? Because actually I didn't want to see a piece of ballet, I wanted to see a non-verbal duologue.
As we mentioned in some of our earlier rewatches, there are repeated glimpses of a statue known as Psyche revived by Cupid's kiss throughout the season, and this imagery plays out during this ballet in a very real way, where the actor playing Eros physically revives Psyche with a wave of his hand. And when she does this, she physically inhales. His love has literally brought her to life. I find this so beautiful, and I love the way the music kind of surges as she takes her first breaths. I also think the decision to use slow motion as the ballet dancers move in close as if for a kiss is so evocative and beautiful.
And it really is a beautiful dance that we see unfold on our screen, and it's such a pivotal moment too. And huge kudos to Jack, because I really think you can feel the emotion and the story being told through his choreography. And this is not just a performance that the ton are watching, it's a huge moment for Penelope's character to finally confront what she's been trying so hard to push away. It's the truth that she cannot live a life without love. She's romantic to her very soul, and she can't betray who she truly is by settling for marriage without that love. And when Jack was choreographing the dance, he knew that this was at the heart a moment for Penelope. He knew that the ballet would spark the realization for her, and so in a way the ballet is almost this duet between Psyche the character dancing and Psyche the personification of Penelope's soul. Interestingly, for Jack, this ballet that Pen is watching is actually deeply connected to the dance that Debling and Pen shared back at the Innovations Ball. It's sort of like a through narrative that's continuing.
He said, "We need to go back to the Inventors' Ball, the dance I choreographed between Penelope and Lord Debling. I wanted it to feel like a wedding dance. It was already creating in Penelope's head head that this is a marriage proposition. I used a lot of armography, so he was turning her. The world of dance and the parallel there he was doing to her, even if that's unconsciously for the character. So when we jump to the ballet, she begins to see how physically this man is lifting and turning this woman. She has that resonance already, that here is my hero after all these tasks. Here is Eros being heroic. I wanted to use some armography that has resonance from the wedding dance. I wanted her to feel that this is a person bringing me out of the effort, the pain. The ballet took us to another level.
So when Penelope is watching the ballet, she's not just being confronted with the story of love, but it's deeply connected to the dance that she's emotionally and literally been taking part of over the last few episodes.
And if you're wondering how the script captures this moment for Penelope, it reads, Pen is with the crowd, the drama unfolding in the dance, mirroring the drama she's feeling inside. This is one of my favorite scenes in season 3 because Penelope is spellbound. Nicola conveys so much emotion here as she reacts to the love story unfolding before her.
I agree. I really love that Jack used choreography to confront Penelope and take her into that headspace. And I also think it's filmed and performed really beautifully. And the music is gorgeous too. And overall, it's just this very moving scene, which I don't think the show's really done anything like this. It feels so unique. And that's why it's so tied in to Penelope and her experience of communicating with Colin through dance that they've had in past seasons. And then having this new confrontation with Debling taking over in that role, and then carrying through to what we'll see later in the episode. And it really shows us Penelope's character without saying a single word needing to be spoken. I think it's just pure performance from Nicola and the dancers. And then the only sound that she does make is the gasp that she releases right in the heartbeat between the dance ending and the applause breaking out just in that tiny little silence. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And our listener Kel said, Nicola has said in interviews that once Pen watches the ballet, she can't deny the romantic side of herself and accept a loveless marriage. How do you think that would have played out if Colin hadn't got there before Debling proposed? Because that's interesting, because as we'll see in the episode, when Pen is dancing with Debling, you can see those thoughts churning in her mind. And Colin's not even there. Colin's not even part of that discussion.
Right.
So what do you think? Would she have gone through with it?
I think she would have turned him down.
Yeah.
I think it's Colin's arrival that kind of pushes her back into, I have to do this
Yeah.
because he couldn't possibly want me. You know what I mean? That kind of mindset.
Yeah.
But I think if it had played out and he wasn't there, that she might have turned Debling down herself.
I think she may have just sort of become overwhelmed, almost like what we see in TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, Ep 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You can see her and really feel the stress, like when she's dancing with Debling.
Yeah.
So potentially it would have been just that would have got more and more, and then she would have fainted to escape the situation.
That old chestnut.
Or it would have been interesting carrying on from that earlier conversation with Portia where she was like, if you don't choose to do the right thing, I will make the decision for you.
Yeah.
I wonder if Penelope had a moment of panic and Portia rushed over there and was like, of course, we're so happy to join our
good
families
point.
or whatever.
Or she just announced it.
Kind of forced the issue.
And then she'd have had to whistle down her way out of it.
Yeah.
You know what? Pen is not good under time pressure.
Pressure. Yeah.
This is a recurring theme, season on season.
Yeah, from season 1, season 2, she ends up publishing her worst issues when she's under pressure, like hurting people, hurting herself. Yeah.
I do like the option of just fainting. That's such a me thing of like, actually, I'm not gonna.
I need to exit this.
Yeah, I'm actually just gonna leave. Well, as the spell breaks, a downcast Penelope half-heartedly joins in with the applause. She's vividly aware now of the position that she's found herself in. She's on the precipice of a proposal to a man she knows will not give her the life of love she so desperately desires. But she barely has a moment to recover before Debling appears and greets Penelope and Portia. And as always, have a little look out for Mr. Finch, because he completely steals this moment for me. Watch him. He not only looks visibly moved by the ballet, he like catches himself as he's clapping.
Aww.
But then when Debling appears, he's like beaming proudly at Debling. Lord MacDonald man that you are.
Portia asks Debling if he is there to steal away her daughter for a dance, as Penelope has at least one spot left on her dance card. And Pen jokingly interrupts to say that she actually has many spots left.
And my darling vegetable. What a moment this is for you.
Yay!
For over 60 episodes of this very podcast, you have expressed your continued pain over Penelope's litany of unsigned dance cards. You've hoped beyond hope that one day a name would finally make its way onto the hallowed card. Well, my love, this is the moment that your wildest fantasies have finally come true. Well done, because you brought Lord Debling to go where no man has gone before.
Oh, Lord.
The little pencil by Pen's wrist. The dance card has finally been signed at long last. Aren't you fucking thrilled, Veg? Got what you wanted?
At what cost? At what cost? No, there's a part of me that still is happy that she had, like, competition.
At least one person.
You're just a Penelope fan through and through. And as the script comically describes, Pen falters when Debling asks to sign her dance card because no one has ever asked this outright.
Wow.
It's like, what the fuck do I do here? This is uncharted territory for Penelope, and whose fault is that? Colin, probably Christopher, even though he didn't actually say middle name during his vows, Bridgerton. Look what you've gone and done, mate. But Pen is so sweet during this little interaction. She's like so off kilter from the ballet and the knowledge that a proposal is probably on its way. But then she gives her mum like this little indignant glare as Debling signs the card. And as the Queen watches the dance floor from her private box on high, we find that it's not just Penelope who has been caught up in the ballet. It turns out that poor Fran has been caught in her own little pas de trois with Lord Samadani and John Sterling, with the three trading eyes between each other during the ballet.
For now, though, it's Lord Samadani who has swept Fran onto the dance floor as an intrigued Violet watches on. It's not long before Marcus joins her side and the two begin chatting about their lives. They actually have a little moment on the side of the dance floor during which he offers her a plate of dessert. She declines it, explaining she has no appetite, and will later learn that she is not the only one.
Who could that be?
But back to Vicus, Marcus explains that he is more used to life in the countryside, so he asks Violet to fill him in on how the Ton passes the time in the city. Violet admits they spend most of the time meddling in the lives of their young people, explaining, at least that is my and your sister's favorite pastime. Violet shares that Lady Danbury not only meddles but molds society, which seems to surprise Lord Anderson. As the pair turn back to Francesca and Lord Samadani, Violet worries that Fran has not yet found that spark with a partner, clearly not buying into Franadani. Marcus then points out that sometimes fire is slow to burn.
So do you think that's him talking about their love story? Do you think they're going to have a slow to burn love story?
It seems that way. This was a very, very slow burning evolution of the relationship in season 3.
I thought Violet was going to like hop on his loins instantly from the way she was speaking in Queen Charlotte.
Yeah, we were speaking of Pen's costuming in the same video where we got some details about that. The costumers explained that Violet wears a lot of sparkles and like shimmer on her costumes because her garden is in bloom this season. But, you know, the garden just needs a lot of watering first, I guess.
Work the land a bit. And Marcus also says that he's hoping to find a love match in his second act. So is this actually mostly Francella foreshadowing?
Francella? I thought it was Francella.
Is that how it... Oh, God, we've got another Binoffy.
Like Michael.
Michaela. Francella.
Yeah. Francella.
What did I say?
Che.
You said Francella.
Francella. Well,
anyway, moving on.
Francella fans, how do you like to be addressed?
Is this set up for Fran's story? Yes, I think so.
Oh, you're actually answering the question, I thought.
I am answering the question. I moved on.
It's like, how do you say Hiereth? Sounds like a castle.
There's like a word like Harieth, which means some emotion. A Welsh word that conveys a deep, wistful longing or homesickness.
Oh,
cute. See you in season 7. Let's carry on.
Back on the dance floor, Fran dances circles around Samadani, perhaps wishing she could instead smash through the column behind them and exit the ball Kool-Aid Man style.
I don't understand that reference.
But it's not to be, at least not yet.
And watching from above, Queen Charlotte brags that even Lady Whistledown could not disagree with the brilliance of her match, which prompts Lady Danbury to ask if this has opened the door to a friendlier alliance between the gossiper and the crown. Queen Charlotte says it very much has. We'll see how long that lasts, Charlotte.
Lady Danbury also has a moment with Alice, who has attended the ball without Will. Will is back at the bar, which Lady Danbury is unimpressed by. According to Lady Danbury, the Queen will not be best pleased to know that a man of Will's rank is still working in a bar, placing more pressure on the Mondriches, and especially for Will to give up his occupation. I have a lot of thoughts about the Mondrich storyline with Will's bar, but we will get into those later in part 2.
Well, Will isn't around, but at least Benedict is. He has had a great time at the ballet and is now making eyes over at Lady Tilly while stroking with the Fullers of Fuller Library fame. Elsewhere across the ballroom, Cressida finally finds Eloise sitting in a box, like a theatre box, not a cardboard box. Can you imagine Eloise just...
She's like Schrodinger's cat.
Like a cat.
She's there, but not there yet. Eloise was like, your dad said you couldn't see me, so I thought this way it was the best of both worlds. Elle is surprised to hear that Cressida has been searching for her, reminding Cressida that her father banned her from seeing that Bridgerton girl.
I love that Cressida is like, you heard that? I mean, like, Elle was right
She's
there.
standing outside the door.
And Lord Cowper shouted it at the top of his lungs. So, yeah, she did manage to hear that.
Cressida apologizes on her father's behalf and the two friends laugh together. Eloise reassures Cressida that she understands if she needs to keep her distance, but Cressida refuses.
And then there's quite a sweet moment between the two where Cressida remarks, "You are unlike many people, Eloise. How is it that you have the courage to be so different?" This honestly makes me kind of sad because there's like genuine affection here between Cressida and Eloise that just gets completely blown up in part 2.
Yeah, we've often talked about how Eloise isn't always a very good friend and she isn't very observant. And there's a little cut moment here. It's a little later, but Eloise is speaking about how women don't really have many choices in life. And Cressida is like, I know that very well. I'm paraphrasing. But Eloise obviously isn't listening to her because she kind of continues on in her rant. But it's just more evidence that Eloise doesn't really recognize that Cressida is in this place where she has to make this horrible choice. And Eloise is not paying attention.
She gets very wrapped up in her own world, doesn't she?
Yeah.
But she's at the same time talking about rights for women, not realizing that her friend, a woman next to her, is facing this almost impossible, horrible choice.
Yeah, she has that classic, has a theory in her head, but just has no idea what it looks like in practice in the real world.
Yeah.
But yes, it is very sad. And as Eloise herself admits, it isn't courage that fuels her, but an inability to understand why other people don't see things the way she sees them. There's a lack of flexibility within Eloise's worldview that sometimes is a strength of hers, but then often can be somewhat of a flaw in her character, as we said.
But for now, Elle has shockingly found herself with an audience. What a miracle upon miracle.
Yeah.
Someone actually wants to listen to Elle.
Yeah.
See her many opinions about how she sees the world. So Elle is thrilled. We love to see a happy Bridgerton sibling, but what about the one sibling we really want to check in on? Where the hell is Colin?
Colin is still over at Bridgerton House, but he's managed to make it from the staircase to the study, so I guess that's kind of progress. Though he's going in the wrong direction. Colin, you gotta go out the door.
He's trying.
Yeah.
Our beloved third Von Bridgerton is sat at his desk, lost in thought. The room is lit only by 3 candles, one which is looking a little bit perilous.
Did you count them?
I did. 1, 2, 3.
That's funny.
Back in the day, we would have been like, for 3 seasons.
Anyway, did you say one is looking a little perilous? I wonder if he takes after Antony, because if you remember from 301 when they're in the club.
Oh my god, that stresses me out with the fucking candle.
Yeah, the little candle on the very edge of the table with Antony. Anyway, if you peer closely, it looks like he also has food on his desk. Like Violet, however, Colin has no appetite this evening, completely lost in thought.
Yay.
As the script explains, we find Colin sat...
Did you just cheer for Colin not eating?
It was more of like
yearning.
Loving this energy, Beans.
it was more of like a concerned we, like, get going.
It's their concerned we, like, wee.
Are you guys comfort eaters or not? Which way do you fall? Because like Colin loves food, but clearly like he cannot eat when he's stressed.
Ooh.
It's a real spectrum.
Depends.
I normally am, but if I'm fully distraught, I don't have much of an appetite.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
Yeah.
If there's like dread in your stomach, you can't eat anything.
Yeah. If I am fully distraught, I cannot eat. And it gets to the point where I like start to faint a little bit.
Oh my god, Pen. Pen just called you Pen.
She's redheaded. You got confused.
But typically when I'm very nervous, I don't eat, but I also take a lot of showers.
Showers are really therapeutic. Like, I remember one of my friends in college said her therapist told her to take a shower whenever she was really stressed and imagine the stress falling off her shoulders or something like that.
What's your coping mechanisms then?
I really like to read, and if I'm in a time crunch but I have a few minutes to collect and calm myself, I'll do something like play Tetris, which actually, speaking of therapy, apparently people have gone through traumatic experiences. They recommend you do Tetris right away for some reason because it prevents those memories from becoming long-term.
Really?
yeah, I've heard that.
Anyway, I really like Tetris.
Well, Colin is taking to just sitting and staring quite beautifully in the dark.
Tetris doesn't exist yet. As the script explains, we find Colin sat alone in the dimly lit study staring into space. He's ruminating on Violet's words, a barely touched sandwich by his arm.
Could not confirm what was in the sandwich.
Sadly. But a barely touched sandwich by his arm. Even food is of no interest to him now.
And that is how you know that Colin Bridgerton is well and truly fucked.
Yes.
Not in that way, but in this way. You know what I mean. Later. This next episode. Shh.
The script continues. After a moment, one of his candles flickers out. His hands move to the lantern encasing the wick. The same lantern he broke in episode 302, the glass now replaced.
Do you remember how much they messed with us in the Part 1 trailer?
Yeah.
They reversed this clip.
Yep.
So it looked like instead of the candle going out, the flame was being revived instead of extinguished.
Yeah.
We were just like, that was the favourite thing we'd ever seen in our entire lives. We made a collage. I think Netflix tweeted about it and we were like, oh my God, the cinematic genius of the light turning on for Colin. They just fixed the trailer. Absolute idiots we are.
I still like the symbolism of the way it is now, but yeah.
It goes out, Lecky. It goes out.
I know. It's different symbolism.
It's him running out of time, yeah.
But I like the way that it was in the trailer for the reasons you stated, but also because it seems like that was the moment that incited him to action, because like the flame burns brighter. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Anyway.
But what's happening, obviously, it goes out and that forces him into action.
We're then treated to a little cut moment here. Instead of the flashback of the hand cut scene, which we explained originally took place in the beginning of 304, Colin instead crosses to the window. The script says he stares out across the street to Featherington House, his thoughts on the girl who has always been there, under his nose, there across the square. His face softens, and then he's moving with purpose as they cut to the next scene. In the original script, it's the view from Colin's window that incites him and moves him to act. I absolutely love this detail. I do like the symbolism of the flame flickering out, a visual metaphor of the way Pen and Colin's own love might be extinguished if Colin doesn't intervene. And while I can see that maybe they cut this for pacing reasons, allowing Colin to make that decision to leave sooner, the whole idea of Colin stepping up to the window and taking in that familiar view, a reversal of the way Penelope has been gazing out at him for years, and that being the thing that forces him into action, I think that would have been a really stirring moment. So I kind of wish they had kept it in.
Yes, but instead of this flashback moment, he would have gone to the window and looked out across.
Yes.
Oh, I would have liked that.
The window motif.
I would have liked that. What do you think?
Same.
Because I think the flashback to 302 always confuses people slightly.
Yeah.
There was so much discussion originally, like, why does he flash back to that moment? And I think him standing up and going over, that has a bit more action to it.
A more resonance. Yeah, I would have liked that better, I think.
Well, we still get a very nice shot of him here, because as the show plays out, we get Colin catching sight of the extinguished flame and flashing back to that moment that we said from 302, where Penelope tended to his wounded hand. And in the final edit, it's this moment in their story which captures Colin and finally snaps him into action as he stands up from the desk. Let's get going, babe. We're right behind you. But as he nips upstairs to pick out, is he already upstairs?
Study. Yeah, it's upstairs. It's the same level as the drawing room.
As he goes more upstairs, I assume his bedroom's on a different floor. We did have quite a few questions of people being like, how many windows look out to Featherington House? Because, like, everyone has a view.
Maybe, like, the servants are all in the back of the house and the Bridgertons all have the bedrooms facing the street.
But as he nips upstairs to pick out his nicest cravat, let's see how things are going down at the ball, shall we? Lady D has stepped outside for some fresh air, and to her absolute delight, she's joined by her brother Marcus. Marcus is trying to get an in on Violet, quite literally, but Lady D is not having it. Marcus protests, though, that although Lady D might think he's just raking around, his activities are pure of heart. Pure of heart. What is that? Where's that come from?
From Narnia, Lucy.
Oh.
Queen Lucy.
He really is looking for a love match, which is so sweet because when I first heard about his character, I did think he might be a bit rakish, but he's just a sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
But Lady Danbury does not agree. If it's between the mind, the heart, or the diddly parts, she's very firmly made her mind up on what's taking charge for Marcus.
Back at the ball, a dance comes to a close. As Samadani dashes off to fetch Fran lemonade, John approaches Francesca and receives a surprisingly frosty reception. Fran tells him that she's too parched to possibly speak with him, to which John says, "Is that not our preferred form of communication?"
Oh, what a Fran podcast, my heart. Even the Arctic would melt at that line, but Fran, she's still feeling a little bit guarded.
As the script states, he's trying to be flirty, but Fran won't have it.
John being flirty.
No. However, when John hands over the sheet music, Fran lights up and looks up at him with, quote, serious hard eyes.
As John says, I'm not a man of many words, and the words I do have, I'm afraid they're not very good. John, shush, out the door. I think you're a gorgeous speaker. I love you. But he continues, I do believe in the power of a gesture. Kill me now before Shondaland's Green Reaper makes it to John. That boy's days are numbered, and I'm getting scared. Guys, me and Lecky talked about this. Do you think John is going to die in season 4 or season 5? Because I always thought season 5, and now I'm getting scared.
4, and then she'll mourn in season 5.
You know what? I'm agreeing with Veg because when we had the Valentine's Day interviews and stuff like that, I just got the vibe that they were going to kill John in season 4 for some reason.
Yeah.
Originally, I did think season 5.
Beans, give me a prediction.
I don't want them to kill him in season 4. However, I feel like what's going to happen is he's going to be really involved in the first part of the season and then die.
Yeah.
In the second half.
Yeah.
And are you saying that would make him less involved?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, he would be hanging over them. But they're just about to go into block 4, and it looks like they're shooting in a church. So they could be doing a funeral now, potentially, which would be around episode 6, which is like that big turning point that Beans always talks about. So John's death could happen around then in the story, potentially.
Right, and that could somehow impact the Benofi in some type of way.
Be like, don't waste time fucking about, because you fuck about, you die.
Yep. You could lose.
I've talked about it before. We all have talked about it before. Bridgerton moves very fast.
Does, yeah.
You know, the first episodes are always just crazy amount of change in one episode.
Yeah.
And so as much as I would love and would prefer if John would stick it out throughout the entire season, I just think based off of what we have gotten in the past, he's gonna die in season 4.
Gonna kick the bucket.
Sorry about that, John. Back to your days of life. You're doing great, babe. Oh, behind you. I don't know how to transition. He's a walking corpse, isn't he? Well, for now, John is alive and well, and his gesture has completely won over Fran as she decides she is ready to leave right this very moment, clearly eager to rush home and play the music John has arranged for her. In her haste, she rejects Lord Samadani's offer of lemonade. Can you believe it?
Scandalous.
Which causes something of a scene in the middle of the dance floor. Violet is pretty flustered, but agrees to head home when she's found Benedict and Eloise. And with a very flirty little bow to John, I love these two flirting. It's just like their own little language. Fran happily skips away.
As an aside, I find it so funny the way Lord Samadani is glaring at John back on the dance floor as Fran walks off.
And isn't that like the last time you ever see Lord Samadani?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gone.
It's so funny.
And Samadani isn't the only one who is left perplexed by Francesca's open rejection. The Queen, having watched the scene unfold before her, exclaims, "What is happening?" And we actually got a clip of this at some point, I don't know, of this happening.
Yes.
It looked so dramatic, we couldn't hear her. So we were trying to read her lips, like it must be a huge moment in the show. And it was her going, "Why hasn't she drank the lemonade?"
Yeah. There is actually, I can't remember if it was that same interview or another one, but there was actually like a little glimpse of a script page in there too. And we zoomed in and we read something about whispers breaking out. And then there was some sort of scandal happening in the ballroom. And we're like, what's happening? What's happening? And it was like Colin brushing past Eloise. And we're like, oh my God, what's happening? But anyway, we'll get back to that.
A cut moment is what was happening, but carry on, Leg.
There's actually another tiny cut moment here because after Brimsley agrees that Fran is not drinking the lemonade, Queen Charlotte originally declared the ball is over. Tell everyone after the next song, the ball is over. Basically embarrassed and infuriated by yet another failure, the Queen decides to end the ball at this moment. Luckily for us, a certain someone arrives just in time to claim the last dance. Who could it be?
Well, you're going to have to wait to find out because I think that a certain someone is probably still trundling along in his little blue carriage. So whilst we wait for him to show up, let's check in on the Featherington, shall we?
Over across the other side of the ballroom, Finch is proudly helping Philippa show off her pregnant stomach, affectionately rubbing her belly as they chat with other ballgoers. As Dankworth tries to comfort Prudence, who thinks children might not be on the cards for them, Prudence realizes her breasts feel a bit tender. Philippa sees all of this and marches over to accuse her sister of mocking her, revealing she's also been suffering from this common pregnancy symptom, and adds that this is not dropsy of the pancreas, one of the other illnesses that Prudank were researching in the cutscene at the Fuller Library. Also, James and Lauren's comedic timing in the scene is so on point, but I especially love the way that Finch kind of puffs himself up and raises his eyebrows in defense of his wife. It's just perfection.
Target locked.
But now it is time, guys. A carriage has turned up at the ball. Not the carriage, but a carriage. And that's all we need right now.
Dink, 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 dink. Dink, 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 dink.
No, babe. You need to do the other type of plinky plonky song.
Oh, Tom's Diner? Do-do-do-do.
This is where Beans realises she doesn't know Snow on the Beach, isn't it?
Oh, you have to do Snow on the Beach now? Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Oh, I don't know Snow on the Beach. Still.
Well, we've got a very nice blue carriage containing my very favourite Bridgerton. As the first flux of Snow on the Beach begins to play out, you'll have to imagine them because Beans doesn't know the song at all.
Ah, Snow on the Beach.
Almost. But as Snow on the Beach begins to play out, a Bridgerton footman opens the carriage and out steps Colin Bridgerton. This is one of those moments where no matter how many times I watch it, my heart is always genuinely right there in the scene. It's like when Colin first steps off the boat in 301 and like my heart genuinely starts racing with excitement.
Yeah.
I think maybe the common denominator is that I just really like Colin stepping out of modes of transport. I don't know. I love it so much. We've seen these episodes and talked about them so many times that like to still have a scene that, yeah, my heart is like fully there. It's really sweet.
Excites you.
Yeah.
Like that's me with Nicola watching the ballet. That always moves me every single time. But for Colin, I love how he nods to himself as he exits the carriage before striding off with purpose. The script even describes him as a man on a mission, and that is what we see.
He is. And how is he looking, Veg?
Well, he's more dressed than when we last saw him. His outfit is a cravated suit, and the formality makes sense to the ball that's held by the Queen, despite the total lack of formality that he's about to display. His outfit is a nice deep blue velvet jacket, a light blue and golden waistcoat, and yes, a cravat and a high-neck one at that. But do not worry, through the neck campaigners, it won't be on for long. His hair is fairly neat for now, and his sideburns are out in full force. This is, of course, Enchanted Colin, as he was long known in the fandom, first making his appearance alongside our beloved Enchanted Penelope during those This Morning leaks. And as I mentioned before, the colour of his waistcoat wasn't dissimilar to Pen's dress, which was quite frankly, I thought about too often in 2023. And Obs, you were particularly obsessed with the idea that Enchanted Colin matched Enchanted Penelope, but the two wouldn't actually be together at the time that they wore those accidentally coordinating outfits. But you're half right. They are apart right now, but they will later get a little bit closer. And this look is very similar to the Osterley Ball look we get from Colin. Regardless, he looks handsome, done up, like the script says, the epitome of a man on a mission. Go and get your girl, Colin. Go, 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 go.
Our enchanted Colin strides forward purposefully towards the entrance of the palace as Atwood Quartet continue to play out their cover of Snow on the Beach. As many of you know, not Beans, but those of you who are not Beans, Snow on the Beach is a song from Taylor Swift's Midnight and features Lana Del Rey in the original version, or more Lana Del Rey in the more Lana Del Rey version of the song. Justin Camps, the music supervisor for the show, told Tidum, "I'm very excited that they gave us permission to use the song because I think it's a beautiful moment. It's Colin finally making a decision to do something with those feelings he's been starting to feel throughout the first 4 episodes and doing the shocking thing of interrupting the dance to speak with Penelope. Penelope's shocked at what's even happening. She can't believe this is happening to her, which is what the song lyrics are about." And our listener Paria said, "I thought Snow on the Beach was the perfect song for that lead up where Colin shows up to the ball, pulls on his little jacket and nods to himself and disses the toxic lords to go get his girl. It's a beautiful song and the instrumental version was both very poignant and a little tense, but in a good way." What do you guys think about the song? I remember that the first time, because they released of the songs that were going to be in part 1 before part 1 came out, and it's such a deep cut that we were all kind of a little bit baffled by it.
Yeah.
I still don't know. When I was playing in the show, when I was rewatching it, I was like, okay.
It's just weird because it's not like one of her tracks that...
Deep cut.
Yeah, it's not a song that has like radio play. It's just a random song from Midnights.
It's a hit in my household. Went triple platinum here. But I like weirdly predicted it, which was very exciting.
You did?
Yeah.
Tell us more. We have the screenshots to prove this.
I think we were like just discussing songs that we thought had come up, particularly Taylor Swift maybe. And I think I said, "Hear me out, Snow on the Beach."
Well, we have like a little thing where we'd have all of our ideas for songs, didn't we? Okay, I've got the date.
Ooh.
The 20th... fucking hell, it's been a long time, guys.
May 26, 2023.
2023!
It's really depressing. I've got it.
She says,
Fetch goes, "Hear me out, Snow on the Beach." I react with a hands up emoji. I go, I see it. That is definitely the music in his sweet little mind. When apparently, I've just made a scene. Yeah. Apparently, when he sees Pen walking down the staircase in a blue dress, fanfic that is, and then I sent loads of screenshots, I was fully on board. But Veg, you called it a year in advance. I am so impressed by you. And then weirdly, on our group chat, we use Snow on the Beach as like a tag for each other, like to call for each other.
Well, no, it's for like the Swifties in the chat, and it's like "whoa" on the beach, and it's for like Taylor Swift news.
We have to have a crossover. So strangely, although it did take us by surprise, Profit Veg, right there in the flesh.
It's a sign, everyone, for the listener. If you throw a lot of darts, eventually one of them's going to go on the dartboard.
Yeah, that's not to mention the entire songfic list of songs that were not in the episode.
I also remember that we were really worried when we first heard that this was in the show that we might not get You Belong With Me in part 2 or at all during the series, because I really wanted You Belong With Me in season 3, and how surreal it was when we ended up getting that as well.
I just want to add that Beans on the 12th of May 2023 added to our song recommendation thread, Holes, Dig It Up. One of the best movie original soundtracks ever. Thank you, good night.
That's a good movie.
That is a good movie.
It's a good movie, guys. The book's also good.
I'm just saying, if I was a music director for Bridgerton, we would have, the show would have the most wackadoodle soundtrack, but it would be incredible. I truly, I'm really tooting my ego horn right now, but I could put some amazing playlists together for Bridgerton.
So Beans, later that year, you added One Margarita song.
I love that song. It's on all my playlists.
And then I was the person that convinced you all that the entire Shrek soundtrack would be amazing for the entire season.
You were correct about that. That would have been amazing.
We will link our Shrollin, which is our Shrek Pollen playlist that we made a long time ago.
I still have, hold on, let me pull it up. I still have an Unhinged Pollen playlist. Let me find it. All right. Okay. It's Who's That Girl by Eve. Who's That Girl? Da-na-na-na-na. That song.
That famous song, yeah.
Harder, Better, Faster by Daft Punk.
Nice.
It's Raining Men.
Nice.
Since You've Been Gone by Kelly Clarkson.
Okay.
The Queen, my OG.
Hot in Here by Nelly.
Classic.
Paparazzi by Lady Gaga, which I still think would have been a great one.
That is so good. Yeah, what a pity.
None of these are unhinged. I can see every scene that these would go in.
Okay. Glamorous by Fergie. Bootylicious by Destiny's Child.
Where's the lie?
Miss Independent by Kelly Clarkson.
Again, Casey. This is a great playlist.
Just the Girl by the Click Five. 'Cause she's bittersweet. Da, 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 da. Spinning Around by Kylie Minogue.
What a woman.
Breathless by The Corrs.
Don't mention The Corrs to me and Lecky ever again after the Masked Singer debacle. What a waste of fucking time that was.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm a Believer by Smash Mouth.
Do-do-do-do-do.
And then that's it.
Beautiful. That's a great playlist. Back to the show. I just want to say that this is my favourite cover in the entire season.
Oh.
And I love Snow on the Beach very much for different reasons. And now it coexists in my heart. Honestly, like this, genuinely, when he gets out of the carriage and like the little plinky plonky start, that's...
I will say this is one of the best uses of the cover in this season, because I feel like sometimes they cut them off a little too abruptly. This one, you kind of like open the scene with the emotion of the song and it's carried through.
And it drives the scene. It creates so much momentum.
Colin, of course, runs into the toxic Lord squad. After Lord Stanton points out that he's fashionably late, Fife tries to convince Colin to go out with them, saying the ball isn't worth it, in truth. But Fife says that this time they're going out drinking at White's instead of that dreadful Mondridge bar, earning a laugh from the other lords. Again, this is not the worst thing that he originally said in this scene.
Okay, guys. I've known about this for a long time. I've dreaded this moment. I knew I'd have to make a public statement about this.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to this.
I've publicly endorsed, supported, embraced Lord Fife for 3 seasons now. I've stared Bert Seymour in the eye and I've declared season 5. And now is the moment where I've previously stood with him. I think now I need to stand aside from him.
Watch him go by.
No, stand by your man, Nobs.
Push past him like Colin.
Yeah. Lecky, why don't you share with the crowd?
So there was some cut dialogue at the very beginning of the scene.
Cut dialogue, gone, not in the show.
Where we hear Fife describing the kind of place he'd rather be, and Stanton agrees with him by saying, "Here, here." Now, what kind of place would entice Lord Fife?
Fucking hell.
What kind of environment does he wish to find himself in?
Go on.
I will tell you. Quote,
Oh, God.
"I hope somewhere with weaker-willed women."
Yikes.
That's not great, is it?
No, it's not. Which is why I think he's a bad guy in season 4, but...
Oh, my dear gravy.
Beans, you don't even know what Fife could do in season 4.
Be a little bitch.
That's not great. I don't endorse that.
Yeah.
How fucking horrible. Yes, I think screen fife has to exist differently against script fife.
Yeah. We will say that these are cuts, so they're not canon.
Cut.
The idea that he wants to find somewhere with weaker-willed women is kind of terrible.
Yeah, not fucking great, Lek.
But the idea is there. It's flickering in the back of his mind. The only thing I hear when it's not canon is that this is his subconscious.
That's very true. And I will say, as like reprehensible as this statement is about weaker-willed women, that we still appreciate Bert Seymour's portrayal. We do love a morally gray character, though perhaps he's dipping more into the villainous side of the spectrum with these cuts. But we love how he portrays his character on screen. We love how he interacts with the fandom. And, you can enjoy a villain. So please be kind to Bert Seymour.
But in the actual scene, that thankfully it does not happen, so my mind is doing everything I can to block it out. After Wilding insults Will's bar, you can see Colin's quiet anger at his friend being so casually dragged in public, and he immediately pushes past them, no longer interested in trying to fit in with the men of society. He doesn't stop to speak to them, and instead heads straight inside to find his Penelope. We'll come back to our feelings on this scene in just a second, but this scene also plays out differently in the original script, doesn't it, Lecky?
Yes, so Colin pushes past the Lord Squad with a no-nonsense but still polite "excuse me." But in the original script at this point, he then paused and turned back to the Lord Squad, who begin to tease him. Lord Wilding says, "You are in a pissy little state lately, aren't you?"
Jesus, oh my lord.
Stanton then joins in saying Colin spent too much time chaperoning young ladies and turned soft, which makes the others laugh. Colin responds to this by saying, it is good you three have your exaggerated stories of bedding women abroad to keep you warm at night, for you do not have much else. He then firmly tells them to fuck off before going on his way. As the script says, he is finally done with these dudes, and the Lord Squad are left licking their wounds.
I had a temporary blind moment, and I didn't read licking their wounds. I read fucking their wounds.
They're off to find some weaker-willed women, so that's on the cards, potentially.
So God, that is quite a difference. That's the whole cut interaction then. So Colin is being openly teased. He really bites back. And it's not just him telling them to fuck off, but he's fully calling them out.
Mm-hmm. And saying that their tales are probably exaggerated.
Yeah, that they're lying. And our listener Tiff asked us, I must know what you all think of the original lines in the fuck you moment when Colin comes out of the carriage to the toxic Lord Squad. I'm of the opinion that the whole thing wasn't necessary, but I really did like him calling out the toxic lords for being, toxic. But the fuck you would have taken me out of it.
Well, okay, I have a different opinion with this one, because I would have loved to hear Colin say, fuck you. Because he doesn't normally, Like, that's not his go-to when he's upset.
It would have sounded great as a soundbite.
Yeah, because the moment is so intense, right? He's going into this to profess his love to Penelope. Well, kind of. He's saying, like, oh, bitch, why are you getting married to this man?
Don't marry him.
And so for me, I feel like, it just would have heightened how sort of fed up he was, how done he is, how determined, But I can see why someone would be taken off. I just would, I think, have loved it because it would have given a bite to Colin that we haven't seen before.
Kind of showing what headspace he's in.
I think if I had to guess why this was taken out, I think it was most likely for pacing reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to really enforce the idea that Colin is a man on a mission. So I think this is one of those scenes where, and we were talking about the music creating this effect as well, there's a real momentum to the scene. Colin has been really paralysed by inaction for the past couple of episodes, but this is finally his moment where he is making the decision to go and get her, literally pushing past all the insecurities and doubts that have been tormenting him. And I think we really need this momentum to carry him from the carriage through to the dance floor. And I just think that extended conversation with the Lord Squad, which would have had a back and forth, would have really broken up that momentum a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's the same reason why those lines were taken out of the dream sequence when Pen and Colin were hooking up again, because there was a momentum that's building and building and building. And suddenly, if you have a pause to that, it really takes the wind out of it. Mm-hmm. And I also think it's important that he didn't give the Lord Squad any of his time. I think for a start, he also really strongly rejected them and showed them up at the club.
Yeah.
But I think that we need to say that the only thing on his mind is Penelope. Like, that's the only thought that's driving him as he goes. And he isn't going to bite back and react to them. And the situation is really urgent for him. And it's kind of a rejection of him not being willing to waste any more time on this sort of cavalier way of life, just not entertaining it at all.
Yeah.
There's also a bit of scene description in this scene which kind of conveys the mood that they were going for. It says, Colin just shakes his head, not wanting to waste his words. He doesn't want to waste his words on the Lord Squad anymore, which I think they kind of tried to achieve in the edit by cutting out this extra dialogue that was maybe not needed to achieve that same feeling.
Also, I wonder if it was cut because Colin directly mentions exaggerated stories of women abroad. Could that have been part of the original storyline where it sounded like Colin himself was exaggerating his own exploits? We've seen that trace throughout the season.
Yeah, possibly, because there was even that cut moment in the carriage with his brothers in episode 1 where he was talking about his travels, and Benedict sensed that there was something off about it in the way that Colin was reacting. And I feel like you kind of see glimmers of that in some of the cut scenes where maybe he wasn't being completely truthful. And even in the existing scenes, like in Will's bar when he brings up the Contessa, he's like, I told you about the Contessa. Did I not kind of making it to be more salacious than it probably was in reality? Because maybe he did have this tryst with this woman, but it wasn't as superficial and sexually charged as some of the other tales his friends are telling to kind of get a rise out of each other.
It would have been a good moment to see, but I think I do kind of get why they pulled it. But overall, I think this scene is one of my favourites from the entire show. I said it a million times before, but I'm just so with him in the scene. I'm so proud of him in the scene. I remember I was watching it for the very first time and just willing him on.
Yeah, cheering him.
With our collective hearts. And we spent literally years at this point loving this character, but also having this character being so constantly so close to realising, almost taking action, almost figuring it out.
Yeah.
But he's always pulled away at the last moment or just not quite got over the line. Mm-hmm. And so to have this moment where we are just pushing him
forward,
finally over there, going to get her, I love it.
Inside the ballroom, we find Penelope in Debling's arms, waltzing on the dance floor. She's lost in thought, gazing across the ballroom, her whole body tense. Debling gets her attention by asking if everything is all right, to which Pen replies, everything's wonderful. Sorry, Pen, we're not buying it.
Pen has a lot on her mind following the ballet, and so asks Debling a question. She acknowledges that it makes sense for Debling to be seeking a practical match considering how often he travels, but she can't resist asking if he imagines, with time, that love may one day grow. I think she's really brave in asking him this.
She is.
She's really putting her heart out there.
Especially when you consider the world she lives in and that love marriages were kind of rare. To ask him if there's a possibility that love can bloom in the practical match that he's been basically telling her about since they started courting, and especially earlier at the Fuller Library, it is really brave of her to say, could this be something different than what you've hinted it's going to be? Sadly, however, Debling says that he doesn't know. His work takes up such a large portion of his heart that it may be difficult to make more space for love. Of course, this is not what Pen wants to hear, and the script notes that Debling also notices that she is taking this hard, and that is why he quickly adds that he's glad Pen is someone who seems to have such a full life.
And I just want to jump in and talk about the dance between Pen and Debling here. So Jack Murphy spoke about choreographing this sequence, and he said, in the rehearsal, I was very adamant that it should all be about the dialogue. Dance shouldn't get in the way. The dance I used was to shore up the actors so they felt secure in each other's arms. It's a very simple box waltz. In choosing that, I had to settle my ego thinking people would think this isn't very fancy. But there's no point being fancy because they won't be able to attach a page of dialogue to something fancy. The reason it's powerful is because he's really leading her in that dance, but it's only post the dance when he says, you're not being truthful. If you're going to be Psyche, you're going to have to go into your soul. He leads her. She lends her weight to him. She's talking through that dance, but what is she not saying? The truth. He knows the truth, yet he embodies the etiquette of leading, taking care of her in public. That moment happens in private when he says, you sit on the windowsill for a reason. That's why I like that dance, because of the quality of their acting. My job is to get out of the way of them, even though they're dancing. And I really like how Jack Murphy uses dance to sort of showcase that Pen is physically going along with it, but she isn't being honest. She isn't telling him the truth, and she isn't being honest to herself either.
This is actually really interesting because I hadn't heard this interview before, and in the original script, Colin and Penelope's dance on the page, it's supposed to mirror the Eros and Psyche ballet. The writer originally wanted choreography to mimic even the camera movements and the choreography of the ballet that we saw earlier. But if you watch the scene, it actually doesn't play out that way. It's this very simple box waltz, kind of like what we see with Debling and Penelope here. So I wonder if that happened because Jack was like, no, it needs to focus on the dialogue of the scene, and he kind of translated the script differently because he realizes what was on the page wasn't going to work, even though the idea of their dance kind of mimicking that ballet is a really beautiful idea in theory. It may have been hard to execute because they had so much dialogue to convey. In In a behind-the-scenes video, Sam Phillips also talked about how much dialogue they had to do in this scene, saying it was the equivalent of rubbing your belly and patting yourself on the head at the same time, which is again why they may have wanted to simplify the dance instead of mimicking the ballet in close detail as they originally envisioned in the script.
And also, it's a thing where the dance is the dance. It's the same dance that's being performed, but she has two different partners. So it almost has to function for both partners. You can't have this swooping, soaring Eros and Psyche dance because you know that Debling has to dance the first half. And so it wouldn't make sense. So instead, do you know how the dance in 303 was like a marriage waltz? It was him commanding and leading Pen. You have to have this here where he is leading her here, her heart isn't in it. And then when she dances with Colin, he is leading her, but her words are rebelling and pulling against him and not going along with him emotionally. So it's like a tug of war.
And yeah, and the similarity we see between those two dances is that there's this kind of tension where one of the characters is kind of being pulled towards the other, but they're kind of fighting against each other in the same way. With Debling and Penelope, they have this stilted conversation where she's like, I want a marriage with love. And he's like, that's not what I'm offering you. And then with Colin, he's like, I don't want you to marry that man. And she's like, I have my own reasons for doing what I'm doing. So there's that kind of battle playing out in both of those dances.
And when she's with Debling, you really feel that she's being pulled into something that's not really hers. And you can feel her panic building as she goes.
There was actually more to this conversation in the script, and you can kind of see the cut they made here as they cut from a shot of Debling smiling down at Penelope to another angle where a visibly devastated Penelope is processing his words. But if you glance up at the top of the frame, Debling is no longer smiling. So here's what you missed. In a darkly comic exchange, Debling continues from his previous line, saying that he is glad that Penelope is someone who seems to have such a full life. But then he added, and friends like Mr. Bridgerton, who one day shall marry and bring even more friends into your life. I think this line is why Pen is visibly devastated. Not only has Debling told her that there never could be love between them, but he's forced her to imagine a world in which he's trapped in a loveless marriage and Colin is even further out of reach. I do see why they cut this, as I think it focuses too much on the Colin of it all, when in this moment Penelope is having a realization about the type of person she is and the type of marriage she wants aside from Colin. But it's such a darkly humorous comment that I'm so glad I get to share it with all of you.
And so clueless from Debling.
Well, I think this is the thing. I would have been really interested to see how this would have been performed because it's either so absolutely clueless from him being like, oh, great that you're friends with Mr. Bridgerton.
Or pointed, like he's trying to see how she reacts.
Or if he performed it as a test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And he's challenging her and being like, well, good job. You've got your good friend, Mr. Bridgerton, who's going to marry with someone else.
But if it was a test, then maybe it cuts away from like how dramatic that moment is when he realizes the window connection. Do you know what I mean? If they show that he's suspecting that much.
Yeah, because I think we know he was piecing it together early in the Fuller Library, but I think that powerful moment with Cressida has to hit where she's like, this is what's going on.
Where you gasp. It's shocking, yeah.
Because he's fully still intending to propose to her at this point. So it'd be weird if he was like, what about Colin? And I agree, I think it needed to not be about Colin this moment. Our listener Tiff also asked, did it bother you guys, which I didn't notice, that the original song that Debling and Pen were dancing to when Colin cut in was in 3/4 and thus their dancing was offbeat? Because this dance was originally rehearsed to Happier Than Ever, wasn't it?
Yeah. I almost like how stilted both of those dances are because you see that they're like these moments of tension where the characters are warring with each other.
Yeah. And there was also a slight difference to how this cut-in moment would have gone with Colin's arrival, right?
Yes. So the script says, angle on Colin entering the ball. Pen's eye is on him as Debling's words said, and while Debling is off traveling, she'll be here watching Colin marry someone else. It's not a happy thought. It's really interesting that Pen was supposed to see him enter originally, but I think it's better that she does not.
Yeah, I agree. It's more that this isn't just about Pen loving specifically Colin, but Pen choosing the life she wants. I think she needed to face that reckoning alone. And I also think it's better that he cuts in without Pen having any awareness of him being just behind. He's like a little demon just on a shoulder in the background.
A demon? All right. As Debling tells Penelope that she looks especially beautiful tonight, Pen takes in an almost panicked breath. Interestingly, the script says that when he calls her beautiful, his words coax Pen's eyes back to him. He draws breath. She realizes it's about to be the moment.
And our listener Hills K said, just have to say one of my favourite parts of the episode is when Debling says, you look especially beautiful tonight to Penelope, because you can quickly see Colin walking into the ballroom in the background and even walking up beside the column in the next shot. And that is such a good point. You can just see, I've written column.
You can just see Colin in the background.
It's been a long day. I love that you can see Colin in the background of the shot as the camera spins with Pen. I like that Pen doesn't see him until he cuts in. He's like the romantic Grim Reaper lingering nearby.
with the scythe. Trying to cut in deliberately with the scythe. The scene description for this moment is also very funny because it says, angle on Eloise, her back turned to Debling and Pen as she excitedly speechifies at Cressida. As Cressida half listens to Eloise chatting away, her attention is captured by a sight across the ballroom. Colin, stepping up onto the dance floor, eyes on Penelope. She interrupts Eloise, saying, interesting. When Elle thinks she's talking about her, Cressida corrects, no, I meant your brother is walking right up to Penelope and Lord Debling.
And I really like that Cressida is the one to notice because she's actually really observant.
She is, yeah.
And it bugs me so much that we don't see this playing out in part 2.
100%.
Because she has noticed, and we'll talk about this in a second, that she's clearly picked up and then elucidates it, like she shares it with Debling. But yes, it kind of bugs me, but we'll get to part 2 later. Because we're watching with Cressida as Colin scandalously and very publicly cuts into the pebbling dance.
And in the script originally, Colin did so by tapping Debling on the shoulder, which I kind of like that he doesn't do here. It's too gentlemanly.
And it's just like, I'm not touching him. But instead of touching Debling on the shoulder, Colin, not giving Debling even half a glance and not giving a single shit whether or not he does mind if Colin interrupts, asks, do you mind if I interrupt? It should only take a moment.
The script says that Penelope is shocked. What is he doing?
His actions draw shocked gazes from across the ballroom.
They do indeed, because this is scandalous, dear listeners. Jack Murphy talked about choreographing this cut in and reminded viewers what a big deal it would have been. He said, column interrupts. Sorry.
Colin!
I love the column thing.
Colin.
Anyway, he said, he interrupts. His action is godlike because it's so wrong. It's not what you do. That's a cut. He cuts Lord Debling, and that's really improper. Through the action of doing that, she's initially enraged, but actually, once the breath settles, he did that for you, my dear. Ooh. So if you're going to read the signals of Eros and Psyche, read this one, because it's pretty strong. This man is mad about you. He is equally possessed about you. Good old Colin.
Colin.
And in a behind-the-scenes video, Jack Murphy talks about how pivotal this scene is for their character development, and he described Debling and Colin as two stags locking horns. He even encouraged Luke as Colin to bristle more, telling him that after the interruption, after Colin had been so without manners, he needed to let those manners flood back in. But you can kind of see that with Penelope too, especially in the behind-the-scenes video I've mentioned. You can kind of see the way she has to school her frustration and act like nothing's wrong when he's just done this huge scandalous thing.
Yeah.
And Luke Newton also talked about this moment, identifying this as Colin's big moment of rebellion. He said, it was really fun to play that rebellious side. I was thinking about how all the siblings have that rebellious nature, but they all show it in completely different ways. We think of Benedict and Eloise as the rebels of the family, but actually with rules of society, like interrupting a dance or being alone with your intended before marriage, these are all things that he's willing to step over the line and break the rules for. It comes down to if there's something he's really passionate about, he's willing to forget about the rules of society and go for it wholeheartedly.
Which he's done before with Pen.
Luke also added, I love the cut-in moment. I had one in season 1 with Marina in 104, and then on a different scale in season 3, the stakes are higher. That was the epitome of him feeling like a man and taking ownership of his life and finding purpose. That was a cool moment to jump in and explore his rebellious nature. And also, if you contrast this with the 104 moment, Penelope pushes him into doing the gentlemanly thing by saving Marina. Yeah. Here he's doing the ungentlemanly thing of interrupting a dance because he wants Penelope.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really great reminder of actually how big a moment the cut-in is, because in our day we don't really associate like what a massive statement this is. It's so public and it is so wrong what he does, and it's noticed. And I really like what Jack says, that this is a moment where Penelope sees it, and that's kind of like irrefutable proof to her. It's a huge statement from Colin, and there's genuine feelings there, because I always struggled with getting Penelope to the point of really believing Colin and getting that journey of how do you go from someone who was so accepted that this man isn't for her and that she won't be with him, to sort of closing it off and just having him as a friend, to very quickly in the same episode in the carriage just fully believing him. And I do think this sort of physical moment of the cut-in is a good reminder, because that's proof to Pen that adds up and is then backed up later in the carriage.
Yeah. We should maybe talk about this, at the end of the episode, but it'd be interesting, like, if Colin had cut in but they hadn't had the carriage moment, what would Lady Whistledown look like? And what would the Ton be talking about if she hadn't talked about the interrupted moment that hadn't ended in an engagement?
Yeah, she'd have to address it. And we'll maybe talk about it in episode 5 because there's obviously so much discussion about, especially when Colin accuses her of entrapping him, which obviously he doesn't mean. But there is the conversation of who entraps who. Yeah. And Pen writes the whistle down announcement, which is a way of entrapping Colin. But it's like, but she had to because he made such a spectacle. But we'll get to there. I think the fan favourite moment of this scene is when Colin just stands there, completely refusing to look at Lord Debling, just waiting for him to go away.
Yeah.
He never says a single word to Debling in the entirety of season 3, but he like clearly absolutely hates his guts.
Yes.
It's like when you've just decided you hate someone, it's like, I can't believe they just breathed.
Can't even look at you. Yeah. Someone on Twitter humorously compared Colin to an angry Snoopy in the scene.
Well, it's like I compared it to, there's a video of like a dog who won't look at his owner.
Yeah.
Because his owner's got a new dog in the back.
Yeah.
And he like literally just that like side eye. Incredible. And Jack Murphy shared more about the effect he wanted to create in the aftermath of the cut-in. He said, there we are at the Queen's Ball, and boy does it come to a boiling point. Lord Debling is an unspoken hero in my book. Sam Phillips is a dream to work with. He plays heroic physically. He has etiquette when he bows after being rudely interrupted by Colin. I applaud the rude interruption because he needs to do it. Debling doesn't admonish Penelope, he guides her. It's a pinnacle. It really hits a point, doesn't it? And he says, don't forget, in the first 4 episodes, Colin witnesses Penelope. He witnesses her dance with Lord Debling. He plays the moment of absolute rage brilliantly, harkening back to the 303 ball where he watched Penelope dance with Debling, which is then echoed by her when he cuts into the dance.
Yeah.
She thinks he's blown her chance and she's enraged. I think that's so cool that this moment where Penelope is really annoyed is like a harkening back to Colin having complete paralysis watching the two of them and it burning but not being able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Jack Murphy continued by saying, but of course, rage is just a part of love because of the passion. We did look at rage. We looked at Nicola dancing with Sam, a wedding dance, which would enrage Luke as Colin Bridgerton. Then we looked at how he needed to walk into that space to enrage Nicola. We didn't worry so much about the steps. We worried about the intent. We're going to do damage here. That's what's requested.
Love that.
Well, Jack, you choreographed it perfectly because Lord Debling takes his leave. He knows there's something going on between these two, and he's not willing to stick around and be cuckolded in glorious 4K HD. He says, it appears you two have something to resolve. I shall leave you to it.
Yep.
And as Pen does some wonderful panicked Regency breathing, there you go, Beans, your absolute favourite, chest heaving. Colin just twiddles his thumbs, waiting for Colin to drop dead.
You've said Colin is waiting for Colin to drop dead.
Oh,
You know what? He does want to drop dead in that moment, so that's also accurate.
Yeah, I was like, it could be right.
Colin's like, Lord, strike me down now.
That could be what you meant.
He's waiting for death to claim him.
Colin just twiddles his thumbs, waiting for Debling to drop dead. Cressida is delighted and sweeps straight towards Debling, but Penelope is pissed.
And after Lord Debling excuses himself, the script says that he bows and exits the dance floor as Pen begrudgingly takes Colin's outstretched hand, not wanting to draw more attention.
As she dances with Colin, she tells him, Colin, you are going to ruin things between me and Debling. Colin is thrilled at the news. Perhaps that is for the best, he tells her, to which she replies, what do you mean?
And thus unrolls Colin Bridgerton's long list of reasons why Lord Alfred Debling is a terrible match for Miss Penelope Featherington.
Is it Alfred? Have we talked about this and I forgot?
It is Alfred.
It is Alfred, and it shook me to my core.
Yeesh.
We put a poll deciding if he would go by Fred, Alfie, Debbers. Sam Phillips voted, and he put Debbers.
I like Deppers. Anyway, Colin says, Pen, you cannot marry him. You hardly know him.
And our listener Sasha asked, during the dance at the Queen's Ball, Colin's first argument for why Penelope can't marry Debling is that she barely knows him, which of course was true to the same degree for lots of couples he married in that time.
True, true.
What he can't stand is how poorly Debling stacks up compared to him on something that he is essentially unbeatable at, knowing Pen.
Yeah.
You're really at the top of the class with that one, Colin. And that he so highly values truly knowing a person in terms of evaluating a potential partner. Oh, that's only going to come back to bite them before long. And I agree. I like the twofold implication that has, because he's so bewildered that she would choose someone she doesn't know.
And it's so unlike him.
And it's so unlike him.
Yeah.
When they have the history of connection between them.
The history of connection.
I know.
Yeah.
And Polin has something really unique in the Tom. They have a long-standing friendship and a long-building love. And I think that Colin has felt so safe in loving Penelope and being loved by her, even though he doesn't know how much she loves him, because she knows him and he knows her and they see each other it's that constant and loyal, those traits that he's recognised and valued within her forever. She has always been there as like the safe harbour for him. And her choosing a complete unknown is just so strange for him. Then you have the deeply ironic implications because, as Colin will discover in part 2, he actually doesn't know Pen fully at all.
Yeah.
And Debling is right that there are other pens in there.
Yeah.
How many pens are there exactly? Colin will find out.
Yeah, but it is this misunderstanding of Penelope that saves Colin in part 1, thinking that he knows her so fully. That's where he finds such refuge in his love for her. But then it's that same misunderstanding that he actually doesn't know Penelope fully that completely throws them in part 2. But that's another day's issue.
Pen insists that she knows Debling well enough. Colin, however, reminds her that Debling is planning on leaving for 3 years. Colin Bridgerton, the worldly traveler who spent most of the time we've known him either planning on leaving or only just coming back from leaving, is aghast at the idea of another man leaving Penelope.
How dare. But I think it is sweet because although he is a traveller, now he's in like my wife mode, and he's never going to like let her leave the room. Well, that's not true, I suppose, in 307, but he is so fixated on like, I love you, I want to be in the air that you're breathing at all times, and I can't understand why you would choose. Like, he knows her, he knows that deep down she's this romantic soul, and he just can't understand why she would choose a life devoid of love, especially when, you know, there's a candidate right there in front of her. But across the dance floor, Cressida and Debling continue to dance, but are both firmly fixed on Pen and Colin. Cressida decides to drop some pretty pertinent information. They do seem upset, do they not? Eros and Psyche battling it out.
Cressida calls Pen and Colin Eros and Psyche here, drawing the direct parallel between the two stories. This is also alluded to in the script, which explains, as I said, was meant to mimic the ballet we saw earlier on in the sequence. The scene description stated, "Sure enough, eagle-eyed viewers may notice the choreography and camera angles mimics that of our Eros and Psyche dancers. Penelope and Colin are playing out the lovers' ballet in real life." As I said, I do think this is kind of lost in the final edit. As much as I love this scene, there are a few moments where we even seem to lose Polin a little bit in this scene as they cut away to other characters.
Yeah, and there was going to be that cut in, and it's in the behind the scenes of them rehearsing, where when Colin cut in and Debling pisses off, Pen is really pissed at Colin.
Yeah, they stay with them.
And Colin puts his hand out, and she really begrudgingly but also kind of half impressed takes his hand.
Yeah.
And we didn't get that moment either. So I think it's one of those things where we just kind of slightly lose a few moments.
Yeah.
But as we watch Pen and Colin scrapping it out, Debling pushes Cressida. "What are you trying to say, Miss Cowper? Are they not old friends?" To which she replies in a line I absolutely adore, "The oldest of friends, really, ever since the Featheringtons moved in across the street." And this is when it finally clicks for Debling, as he says, mostly to himself, across the street from the Bridgerton house. Well, shit.
Well, shit.
I remember we were all so shocked by the window and Debling reveal here. I think I gasped. Oh my God, I was so into this moment. I loved the way they set this up, and the reveal, the payoff was just so good.
And our listener, Murphman's mama, said, "Oh, the Cressida of it all. While Colin is discovering that Pen's false peace in a lonely marriage is more tragic than her fear of spinsterhood, Cressida is spilling all the tea to Debbers on Polin. Pen's men are each in their own tailspins." Would you change anything about either of these revelations, or do you think the 3-year absence and neighbour linchpins are the best choices for each love story's storyline? I love that it was Cressida.
Can I just say, what a beautifully worded question. Do you want to do our scripts?
Thanks, Mitch.
Oh, no. Do you want to do my section of the script?
Beans, how did you feel about Cressida spilling the beans?
I liked it a lot. I feel like Debling knew what was going on, but he needed somebody to say it to him because I feel like he was also kind of dragging his feet a little bit.
And he needed that last context because he hasn't been around for years.
Right.
Yeah, like the cuckold alarm in his brain lit up, but it was orange, and like this is when it goes red.
Yeah. Exactly. So I liked it. I think it was a good scene. It kind of shows that, like, in her nature, like, Cressida wants to be better, but also she really loves to be part of that, like, gossipy side as well.
And that she kind of gets in her own way like Eloise, and that she's so desperate to make a match that she's kind of doing this thing that almost repulses Debling, because while she's revealing information, he didn't want to be on the dance floor in that moment. He wanted to escape from the scene, and he didn't necessarily want to hear this information because I think he's already kind of processing it a little bit on his own terms.
Yep.
You know what? I wish that Cressida had just told us when they moved in. It drives me insane that we don't know how long they've known each other. Like, I don't know why we can just have that confirmation.
Yeah.
But then Cressida's noticed that it's clearly more than friendship. So when do you think she figured that out? Is it an open secret, or is it just that she has spent a lot of time paying attention to Pen and Colin and she's pieced it together?
We've talked about it a lot before, but, like, even Penelope's sisters know that she is into Colin. And I say that because Penelope's sisters are like sort of aloof and they don't really pay attention to her or whatever, but it's obvious to a lot of people. And on top of that, there was that scene 208 last year when the other guys were like, well, what's up with that Penelope girl? Like, you guys courting each other? You courting her? What's going on? So people in the town do absolutely notice. I just think they have such a lack of respect for Penelope and they don't take Colin very seriously either. So they just let it be.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like Cressida probably saw the full moon ball, Colin running off after Penelope and was like, there's more to that. Everyone else is just kind of like, oh, Penelope, how embarrassing for her that she needs to be coached to find a man, where I think Cressida actually read more into that situation than perhaps other people did. So I feel like she kind of had a hint of that there. But I do like how this entire thing plays out. I don't know if Colin's argument about him leaving for 3 years, I mean, I like how pointless it is.
Are you telling me that Colin Bridgerton doesn't have an ironclad list of reasons why Pen shouldn't be with Debling?
Yeah, we'll get to that. Back to Pollen. Pen has no idea that the rug has been pulled out from under her by Cressida's revelation. Pen insists to Colin that she's made her peace with the kind of life that Debling is offering her and is planning on accepting. On that bombshell, the dance ends and Pen drops her arms from Colin, who stands in front of her, horrified.
And as Debling storms past the duo, Colin loudly tells Penelope, I said I would help you find a husband, but I cannot stand by and watch you make a mistake. I think it's hilarious that Colin timed that so that Debling would hear as he called him a mistake.
Yes.
Pen is not happy though and tells Colin the only mistake was me ever asking for your help in the first place, which ironically is itself a mistake because Penelope never actually asked Colin for his help. He offered it.
I think that Penelope genuinely was just fucking confused by how he was acting.
Yeah.
I think it was so far out of her mind that he'd be into her, she just didn't get it.
Yeah, for sure.
The last time these two spoke to each other was at the Innovations Ball when once again Colin was being fucking weird on a dance floor. It's like the only context if you actually pin down the conversations they've had with each other, it's like they spoke in a tent and he was just sort of lingering behind her.
Right.
And then he half spoke to her at the Innovations Ball but was being really strange in front of everyone. And then literally they've had no other conversation between him then cutting in. What is the context for this?
Well, that's men for you, right? That's totally men. Men are so bizarre with their feelings,
Correct.
You'll be in a dating stage with them and then they'll be like, well, I don't want a relationship. But then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go date other people then because I do want to be in a relationship. But then they get possessive and they're like, but I like you and I get jealous seeing you around other people. And then it's like, well, then you want to be in a relationship. and it's just confusing. And I feel like this is what Penelope is going through.
Yeah, because she's dealt with her feelings for him for literal years and she has managed to still have full sentences.
Yeah.
Composure. Human interaction. Normal breathing and sentence structure.
That's the thing though, as a woman, it's fairly obvious when you like somebody because you tend to do things for them, you're very nice, you treat them a certain way, romantically. And then men do that and can still be like, they're a friend.
Colin's just gone full on bleep bloop mode.
I know.
Yeah. But got more to worry about now as Pen dashes after Debling to try to patch up this little disaster, leaving our boy speechless. And one of our listeners, Samantha, asked, in one of the behind-the-scenes clips, we see Eloise approach Colin after Penelope chases after Debling. How much do you think Eloise was picking up on Colin's feelings for Penelope in that moment? I don't think that girl's picked up anything in a long time.
Yeah.
Do you think she was already starting to realise he had feelings for Penelope, or was she just confused by his reaction? I've always wondered what she was going to say in that moment. Well, Lecky, do you have more answers about this weird moment with Eloise that was cut?
Yes. So before Colin could go after Penelope, Elle found him on the dance floor. She asked him, what on earth is going on? Comically adding, are you still helping Penelope? Yet more evidence that Elle isn't the most observant person. Colin then replied by saying that he couldn't talk right now before brushing past her. Then suddenly whispers erupted and the music stopped. But it's not because of the scandalous way Colin interrupted the dance or the dramatic way that he, Pen, and Debling exited the ball. This is because, as we mentioned earlier, in a cut moment, Queen Charlotte called for the ball to end after this dance, upset about Fran's rejection prediction of Lord Samadani.
And our listener Tote said, the big question I have for you is, how is Eloise not picking up on any of this?
I don't know.
We know that she is not always in their presence, so she does not see how they are interacting together. And of course, she did not know that they had kissed. But how can she see him interrupt the dance and not put all of it together? Can she truly be that oblivious when she spends a lot of time watching them together? And I kind of think that's why it was cut, because Eloise doesn't make any revelation in this little cut moment.
Yeah.
She's just like, what's going on? Are you still helping? And like, we're so far past that.
Yeah.
Story-wise, that it just kind of is a bit
Comical.
It doesn't provide anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about Elle not seeing it? Because we're going to see in episode 5 that she is completely taken aback by the engagement announcement.
Interesting. I think she's also slightly in denial. And I feel like she's been in denial for a couple of episodes now. Like, we know that Elle is fairly, like, self-centered for the most part. And so she doesn't necessarily see Pen's, like, love that she has for Colin. But at the same time, I don't entirely believe that even when I'm saying it. I think she's had an idea, but she's had such possessiveness over Penelope that she doesn't want to believe it's true. So I think that while Eloise is taken aback when it does happen, I feel like when she sits down and thinks about it later, like, she realizes that it's always been there. Yeah. And I think it's more of just some denial at this point on her end.
I also feel like the last couple times she's seen Penelope has been aggressively pursuing like the courtship with Lord Debling, and that has been progressing. But I do feel like this was such a bold moment that the wheels should be turning for her, and that's why that dialogue didn't really make sense to keep in. Because like at this point, there should be a hint there.
Yeah.
She can still be shocked when she finds out about the engagement, but she should still get an inkling that there's something more to Pen and Colin's relationship just based on their actions here.
But she's like 2 episodes behind.
Yeah.
Which in this story is like a really long time away. Like,
Yeah.
we're so far past that, babe.
Yeah.
So far past that.
Yeah.
It's like what she was saying to Cressida, where she can't understand why people don't see the world that she does. She's very locked into the way she sees the world. And I think to an extent, she sees Colin as her brother.
Yeah.
And she sees Penelope as her friend, ex-friend, whatever.
Right.
And because she sees them as those people, she can't comprehend that those 2 people could see each other in a different way.
Yeah.
Like, they are people in her life, and the idea that they have their own little worlds. Because Eloise doesn't have this connection with love at the moment, so she just doesn't see the romantic connections. She sees marriage as a trap and as coercion and as limiting. She doesn't understand like this expansion that love provides, that they found in each other.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she also in the beginning of the series, and I know she was doing this because she was upset with Pen and she didn't want Pen to be around the family, she also was very, very hyper vigilant about being on Colin's case, like, well, you're not helping her find someone. Like, why are you guys getting so close? Yada, yada, yada. So again, that just sort of leaves me to believe it's been in the back of her mind. So while she's saying it for one thing, she also means it as like, why are you trying to get with my friend? You know?
But she like never questions why Pen decimated Colin in the Whistledown in the beginning of the series.
No.
Just to continue Bean's thought, I wonder if it's kind of like what you said about Debling earlier, where she asked that question, but there was kind of like
jealousy,
like a tone to it, where she's like, confirm to me that this is not what I think it is. Do you know what I mean? Are you still helping Penelope? And she wants him to say, yes, I'm just helping Penelope. Get out of the way, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that idea. And I think you do see Elle grow a lot in the series. It's just she does have these moments where it sort of pulls her back a bit.
Yeah.
But let's go see how things are going on the good old ship Pebbling. Or more accurately, the very crash into the rocks, taking on water and sinking faster than you can say Northwest Passage ship Pebbling.
Pen dashes out of the ballroom and follows Debling up the staircase, where the two have a private confrontation. Now they are out of sight of society, Debling's anger is palpable. Pen apologizes for Colin's interruption and asks to resume their conversation, heading back to a proposal despite what just happened with Colin. But Debling is not having any of it and simply asks her, why is it you sit at your drawing room window so often? Penelope is stunned, but he continues, all week I've watched you search for someone. I thought you might have had a falling out with Mr. Bridgerton, but now I suspect you may have been searching for him for a different reason. For the same reason you prefer your drawing room window and the view it affords out towards the house across the square.
And believe me, this absolutely gagged us when we first watched it.
Yeah.
I still can't believe they brought the windows into it. Right, here's every single time I could find where Pen sits, reads, looks out, thinks, does anything by a window across the seasons. Prepare yourself for me to say window a lot. 101, Pen is reading by the window as her sisters look over the miniatures. Pen is then seen reading by the window when Marina's first set of suitors appear. However, when Colin also joins the suitors in Colin and Marina, Pen moves inside the room, away from the window. 106, an annoyed Pen has a confrontation with Marina by the window. 108, Pen ends a season sobbing with Eloise. However, the script clarifies she's not crying over her dead dad, but over Colin. It says, Pen's been looking out through that window this whole time, and now we know she's not talking about Lord Featherington when she says, I will miss him so much. Season 2 opens with Pen being chastised by Portia, saying, how many times must I warn you to be wary of that window? Later in the same episode, Pen is reading by the window as Mr. Finch laughs over Whistledown. 203, Pen is pacing by the window as Whistledown remarks the Bridgertons are out of town. She's also seen reading in the same spot when Prudence is being taught how to flirt. 208 begins with Penelope sadly looking out the window and making a quip to her mother about the Featherington ball. The episode ends, according to the script, on a heartbroken, embarrassed, angry and scared Penelope Featherington. She's staring out the window at Bridgerton House. 301, Pen gazes out the window sadly after her run-in with Colin as she reflects on her life. 302, big episode for the window. Pen obviously sits by the window after the disaster at Osterley. As day falls to night, she's staring out across the square. Colin looks out of his window at the same time, reading Whistledown and worrying for Pen. After their first kiss, the script describes this moment for Penelope as, in that moment, the spell is broken for Pen as she realises she is pressing her face against the window of a house she cannot live in. In 303, there is a cut moment of Pen watching from the window and thinking about the first kiss. And then, of course, 304, it all comes to a head, window-wise. Debling asks Pen about why she sits by the window, but she dismisses it and just says that she's tired of the view. There is a cut moment of Colin crossing to the window before he leaves for the Queen's Ball. He stares out across the street to Featherington House, his thoughts on the girl who has always been there under his nose right across the street. And then at the ball, all the pieces fall into place as Cressida reveals the Pollen meet cute and Debling realises exactly what that window means for Pen. And then lastly, on a more cheerful note, looking forward to the season 3 epilogue, we end the entire season with Pen and Colin standing together in front of the window, hand in hand. Penelope no longer needing to look out across the street because everything she wanted is right there in front of her in her very own living room. And to know that this is a pivotal moment for Pollen, the revelation to us as well that it has always been about Colin, is something I really appreciate. And Pen absolutely flounders under the weight of finally being exposed. It's quite rare that someone actually calls her out directly. Mm-hmm. Beyond like the time with Marina, maybe.
Yeah.
I think is the only other time it's actually happened.
Mm-hmm. There's also kind of another really interesting parallel here between these two scenes because Pen has almost stepped into Marina's shoes in a way, both being confronted about her feelings and personally denying the possibility there could ever be anything between them, almost but not quite as callously as Marina did, because to her that fantasy is so far out of reach. Pen is still denying it, saying, I do not know of what you speak, which is basically what she says to Marina.
Yeah.
But Debling cuts straight through her, telling her, I'm speaking of Mr. Bridgerton and the feelings between the two of you. Ooh. As Pen scrambles, she insists it would be laughable for Colin Bridgerton to ever have feelings for her. We are friends, nothing more.
But Debling challenges her by saying straight to her face, would you like it to be more? And Pen again flounders, being like, that is not a possibility, which is such a catch for Debling to make. He says, I did not ask if that was a possibility. I asked if you would like it to be.
His acting in the scene is so good.
Absolutely reads her for filth.
Yeah.
You can't deny it. Like it or not, Debling has a way of seeing a part of Pen that she covers up.
Mm-hmm.
Even back in 301 and 303.
How many yous are there exactly?
Yeah.
One that is in love with your best friend. Yeah.
And maybe it's because, he's not grown up with Pen. So he hasn't got the history of connection that sort of blinds him, which we see with Colin. He can see straight through. Mm-hmm. And he is not happy because he is effectively going to be cuckolded. Yeah. And he tells it straight to Pen that he fully expects that she and Colin would cheat on him while he was away.
Yeah.
He says, Miss Featherington, with the amount of time I will be gone, it is essential I make a match with someone whose affections are not already engaged elsewhere.
It's a polite way of saying that, to be fair, to his credit.
Where is the lie? She's literally pregnant 24 hours later.
Yeah.
Now, there was all those jokes about her having to hide brunette babies, but we can see that the ginger gene is strong with that couple. Yeah. So
would have been fine.
And I also think it's interesting that Debling is one of the only people in the ton who take the Pollen relationship seriously and identify that it would be a sexual relationship.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be like a case of like pity or Colin pitying Pen or them just being two friends. Like he actually sees it for what it is, which no one has called out before.
It's because Debling also takes Pen seriously.
Yeah.
And I think it goes for our argument that he has been attracted to Pen and there has been an interest there. Yeah, there perhaps was also an interest for Cressida as well, but I think Pen intrigued him in a way that he, you know, couldn't deny to himself. And so for him, he has never, like, devalued Pen in a way that, like, insults her as a person. You know, he's like, you would have a romantic relationship with this person, not because it's outlandish, because it's true.
Yeah.
You are someone who's interesting, who has, like, multitudes.
And you're a woman.
Right.
Also, even though Debling has said that he wants a practical marriage, I really like that interview with Sam Phillips where he says that he imagines that Debling is someone who has loved and lost before. And I feel like you can almost see that in the way he does this scene, because you can sense so much emotion behind his words.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason that he recognizes that Penelope has these deep, intense feelings for Colin is because he's felt that before.
He identifies it.
But I think that maybe is like a kernel of the emotion that we're seeing in that scene in his portrayal there.
For sure.
And it isn't a portrayal of just, I've literally wasted my time, I was looking for a housekeeper. There is emotion there. And he says, whatever it is you are searching for, I do hope you find it. Good evening. And with that, Debling is gone. We never see him again.
Sorry, Cressida.
Off to be a little icicle, I think.
Or a time traveler.
You know, take your pick, babe. Our listener Muffman's mama said, a tiny part of me thinks that Devers was falling for Pen prior to his dance with Cressida. The way he watched Pollen dance together just jumped off the screen. Does anyone think that Debling would have eventually fallen ass over tea kettle? What a great phrase. Get her on the pod. For our lovely Pen, what do you think Colin would have done if Pen had become Lady Debling?
I have said before that I think despite himself, Debling has had an interest in Penelope and has seen her as a woman and seen her as someone who could be a decent match for him. And I think regardless of his feelings towards not wanting to have a romantic relationship, he would still fall anyway because of his sort of intense interest in her as well.
And look at a story like Philoise. You have a character with Elle who is so insistent on she's not going to fall in love.
Yeah.
But, like, it's something that, like, you can't ultimately control that.
Yeah.
And we see that Pen and Debling have a bond. And I think he was kind of holding himself back and keeping that distance to protect himself emotionally. But I think the emotion that you can see in this scene, which is frustration as well, is sort of like, despite himself, him not really being able to admit, like, fuck, this actually hurts.
Yeah.
This isn't just like my pride is wounded because you'd have fucked off with him. It's like everything's completely fallen apart. And as for what Colin would have done had Pen become Lady Debling, he'd been on the first boat out of there.
Yeah.
He'd have done a lot of journaling.
Traveling with myself.
Travelling with himself. And then he'd have come back just as Debling isn't in town. And AO3.com will tell you the rest. But yet this is the last time we've seen Debling. So I like Debling overall. Are you glad he was included?
What?
Boo!
People are going to throw tomatoes at me.
Boo!
I think his character is interesting. I think he left at the right time. We didn't sort of need that to carry on any longer.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it didn't actually get to, like, an actual proposal. I think it's so interesting that he called it off. I think it's interesting that he calls it for what it is and takes himself out of the equation.
Well, that's why I think he's inherently sort of romantic, because in the end, he was also trying to protect and preserve his own feelings as well as Penelope's. So it also kind of ties into Sam Phillips' whole, like, he thinks Debling has loved and lost before because he also realizes Pen essentially will be losing someone that she could be with, and he knows those feelings and what it feels like to lose someone.
I think that Sam Phillips is a really great performer, and the way that he brought Debling to life was just great. And I also feel like with the direction they took Pen's storyline this season, we were going to see her pursued by some suitor anyway.
Right.
So for them to flesh out and develop one suitor instead of her just having really thin connections with other people, I think it was kind of important to show us that there was somebody who was like a serious threat to Colin for the storyline the writers were telling this season.
Right.
And that's something Luke Newton said. He said, for all that Colin is there making his little lists of whatever, the threat is that Debling is a good match. Maybe not the perfect match, of course. Maybe it's not true love, but it is a good match.
Workable. Yeah.
And I agree with the portrayal. Like, I think Debling could have been on paper like a very flat character. I think, like, his lines here about, like, you would have cuckolded me, it could have been played as I only care about having an heir to the estate that's legitimate, but I think it's more layered than that. And I think, although we want Polin to work out, I would prefer to have developed characters telling the story.
Yeah.
I really loved the emotion brimming under the surface in some of his lines of dialogue, especially at the Fuller Library when he approaches the idea of potentially proposing to Penelope. You can see that there's real feeling, emotion there. Maybe not like like romantic feelings, but he's invested and he wants to take that relationship forward. He wants to marry her.
A happy match.
Yeah.
Like that's what that's what they settled on.
Yeah. I mean, it may not be love, but yeah, some joy that they could find together.
Right.
Yeah, instead of just a business transaction.
In comparison, if we're thinking about like other suitors in previous seasons, I would say I have preferred Debling's storyline to maybe the prince's storyline in season 1 because he wasn't a super fleshed out character. And at that point in the story, it sort of felt like he was just thrown in to make a ruckus between Simon and Daphne, but like was just solely used as a plot device. Whereas, yes, Debling was used as a plot device, but he was also a well-rounded, interesting person. And so I appreciated that. It also wasn't just about Penelope, it was about the development of individual characters themselves.
Yeah.
I also feel like Penelope and Colin know each other so well, and we've seen them together for so many seasons, that if they just introduced this one character and he was kind of thinly developed, underdeveloped, kind of like the prince, we wouldn't see him as a serious threat.
Right.
So they had to give some like meat to his character, for lack of a better term, to make him a
vegetarian. That's probably some sort of
a viable
crime against him to say that, Lecky.
love interest. But do you know what I mean? Because if you're comparing the weight of these two relationships, Pen and Colin have this like immense, deep bond
History of connection
that we've seen on our screens for 3 seasons. So you really have to give Penelope a love interest that almost measures up to that. Debling doesn't hold a candle to Polin's relationship, but he needs to be like a contender.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you see the difference where you have someone like Lord Samadani who unfortunately like just there isn't space for his character to be developed, like and so you just kind of forget about him.
He's very much like the prince. I've got a large family. I'm a family man. I'm kind of nice. That's basically the prince's characterization in season 1 is Samadani.
And we can see really clearly that like obviously Fran's not going to go for him, and we're just kind of as an audience just impatient to sort of get past it because we know that there's a different story being told with John, but yeah, I think it causes Pen to really be like, instead of just being able to reject someone who's like evidently a dickhead, it actually makes her sit and think and be like, I actually need to choose what life, instead of being like, well, he's a twat, so I'm not going to marry him.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, what do I actually want? And I like that it's not just a cheap love triangle.
Right.
Yeah. I like that it causes both characters to develop and do something and be active.
Right, which is what I think we were concerned about when a Debling was initially announced, that it was going to be like a cheap love triangle and that like we weren't going to like it and we didn't understand why it was there. And I feel like this is one of the things that they did well.
And I love that Penelope's realizations aren't just about Colin, but about herself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh, yeah. That's so good.
And I think Colin's realizations in this episode aren't just about Penelope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're about himself. And the fact that those two realizations lead each other to each other is beautiful. Like the fact that realizing who you truly are means that you can have the love, like that's beautiful. But I think the fact that their main journey is to being true to themselves.
Yes.
Right.
That's why I'm so proud of them in this episode. It's not because they do something together. It's because they both stand up for themselves.
Yeah. And as Debling dashes off to look for a ball with less engaged women, perhaps opposite a club with the weaker-willed women that Fife was searching for, Penelope is joined by her mother.
I bet Debling went home and had a little cry and he packed his little bag straight for the penguins.
Yeah.
And off he goes. So Debling is leaving our lives forever.
Good riddance.
And potentially leaving his life behind forever.
R.I.P.
Your days are numbered, bitch.
Until he travels to the future.
Yes, right. They have modern medicine and warmth. I don't know.
Sam Phillips. I have 2 questions for you, Sam Phillips. First of all, are you going to die in Antarctica or the Arctic or wherever you are?
Yes.
Second of all, the only other question I need about Debling, what fucking rank was he?
Oh.
Someone needs to tell me. But Debling has left our lives and probably this world forever.
Good.
We're actually going to take the opportunity to leave your ears just temporarily. We're going to cut this episode here. I know it's so annoying when we do this, but
You know, we've been talking here for a while.
guys, you don't want to listen to a 5-hour episode.
Yeah.
I know sometimes you tell us you want to listen to a 5-hour episode. You don't want to listen to a 5-hour episode. I promise you. So we're going to cut this. What's going to happen? Who knows? We'll see you next time for a little carriage chasing.
Ooh.
A little
Dink, 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 dink.
We will be back with part 3
Yeah.
Woo, woo, woo.
of episode 4.
Yeah.
Guys,
Listen or don't. You can skip to the next one.
Is season 4 appearing anytime soon on the horizon? Yeah. Answer me that and then get back to me. But in the meantime, as we continue on with our episode 4 journey, where can everyone find us?
You can find us at What a Barb Pod on Instagram and TikTok.
And you can find us audibly on Spotify and all your favourite podcast platforms. And you can find us audio-visually on YouTube with beautiful collages.
And if you would like to support us over on Patreon, we've got lovely little things that we do over there.
We're doing stuff.
There's stuff happening.
Yeah, or you don't have to. It's totally up to you.
Optional.
You can go follow us on whatabarb.com/Patreon. I don't know.
We haven't bought the domain yet.
Patreon.com/whatabarbpod.
I'll be better at it one day.
But until that episode, Beans, do us the honour. You can't do dink, dink, dink. We're not at dink, dink, dink yet, so you're going to have to think of something else.
Yeah.
Sing us out.
I can be your hero, baby. I can kiss the pain away.
I will stand by you forever.
You can take my breath away.
Did you just exhale? Oh. That was really breathing
went
like Penelope at the end of the ballet.
Das violin. Do 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 do. Do.